All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, coming to you live on a Wednesday night at 7 o'clock Eastern time to talk college football week 5. We are the voice of college football, as you well know. If you've watched us for any period of time, if you are joining us for a first time or have caught a very little of the voice of college football here at Mark Rogers TV, please check out the videos. We post videos every day on the game that you and I love, hardcore sports fans, hardcore college football fans. For the smart fan, that would be you. All right, we're striking up the live stream at 7 o'clock Eastern time on a Wednesday night. We've got an action-packed, fun couple hours in store. What I have done for the first time this particular live stream, and I've mentioned this in recent weeks, that I wouldn't necessarily have specific guests coming on at specific times. It's a waste of my time. It's a waste of individual guest time and trying to track them down and chase them down and build a schedule. And then all the intricacies of it is just way too much. So we've got a number of live windows throughout the week. This being Wednesday night at 7 o'clock Eastern time. We will be back Thursday night, 7 o'clock Eastern time, prior to Miami and North Carolina. I have let all my contributors know. I've let them all know that the live link is out there, that it will be sent to them via email and or Twitter. So it's on the live stream right now on Twitter. If you go to Mark Rogers TV at Twitter and look at my feed, you will see that I've got a link out, and that is the link for media guests to join us to talk their team and talk their game this week, week 5 of college football. For everyone else, I'm taking calls at 860-325-3687. And before we start talking college football, I want to remind you that we've got a newsletter that was just released at the beginning of the football season. So the very first Monday of the football season, we released edition number 1. We are 4 strong and going well with our newsletter, the voice of college football. So please subscribe to our newsletter. That's all you need to do. Send your email to MarkRogersTV at Gmail. We'll get you signed up. That's your only obligation. And then every Monday, you're going to receive a college football email from me, a newsletter, the voice of college football, with a channel update, with my take, my perspective on the previous weekend of college football. You will also see facts, trends, stats, streaks that you will not find anywhere else. And I also invite you that if you come across any interesting nuggets from the weekend, let's say this weekend coming up, you come across some interesting stats, trends, percentages, anything in that realm for us nerds of college football, send them my way to MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Either leave them in the comments section or get them to me in some fashion, and I will include those in the newsletter, the voice of college football, which, again, we had just released this past Monday, our 4th edition of the voice of college football. Also, keep in mind that by shopping Amazon, you help us if you use the link in the description section. So check out any of our videos, and down in the description section underneath the video, you will see 3 links from Amazon. Grab one of those links. Never mind what the product is on the link. That doesn't matter. Just please use the link in entering Amazon. Do your regular shopping right there, and you contribute to Mark Rogers TV in a very small but very significant way. All right, this week we've got our top 25 that actually makes sense. Check out that video, as well as conference rankings. I have rated the conferences the last 2 weeks because after week 3, most of the non-conference games are in the books, and we can rate and rank the conferences. Quite a bit of a mix-up and a change in my conference rankings from week 3 to week 4 following more implosion by the ACC. Previews and predictions are coming your way for the rest of this week. Many of that will be contained during these live streams because I've got a number of media guests that will be jumping on the line over the next couple hours. They've got the link. Hopefully they understand the instructions. I've tried to explain it to them that no longer, except for some rare occasions, will I be setting up specific segments to tape with and record and perform a live stream with a particular guest. and narrow ourselves down to one team or one game preview. What we're doing is, you guys love these live streams. I love them too. So I still want to have that interaction with a number of media contributors, bloggers, broadcasters, and writers. So we will continue to invite them on, but in mass. So anyone who grabs that link in terms of our media contributors, and I've sent that link out on Twitter and sent it to 50 or 60 people via email, they can jump on board and we will preview their team and their game coming up this week. Otherwise, it's just me and you. We're talking college football. You can join me at 860-325-3687. I will put the number in the chat in just a second. And the only time I'm not going to take phone calls is if I have a guest on. I will not be taking phone calls while we're having our conversation. And I apologize because of the rudimentary process of taking the phone calls. I can't put you on hold. So if I'm making a point and you call in, I'm going to stop my point. I'm going to answer the phone. If I have a guest on, I'm going to let your call go. Please call back after our guest is through. All right. Again, that's 860-325-3687. Coming up tomorrow night, more Thursday night college football with North Carolina taking on Miami. We'll be on before the game here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. We'll hit you up with a, some water, please. We'll hit you up with another live stream at 7 o'clock Eastern time just prior to the game. Then we'll do some halftime, and we'll do some post-game. How about that? Halftime and post-game tomorrow night, as well as the pregame. As we've got a call coming in, I could probably take a guess as to who it might be. It's MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who do we have on the line?
Hey, it's George.
Oh, Oregon, it's George. Boy, if I was a betting man, George. If I was a betting man, I would have bet it was you coming on the line. How you doing?
I'm doing good. We've entered the age of free agency in college football officially.
Well, maybe official if it became official with the 100th graduate transfer in the last couple of years, possibly. Yeah, here's another one with Kelly Bryant.
And the four-year rule now. Throw that in. That's good stuff. I love it.
Yeah, we were going to get to that news. Kelly Bryant unhappy with his situation there at Clemson. There's actually another football player that's better than him that's taken his job. And this is what football is all about, right, George? Competition.
Hey, no one's happier than me.
And you're happy.
It's
why?
All working out perfect. It's better than I could have expected. It all looks good. Everything seems legitimate.
How in any way does this help you or your Florida Gators?
Well, I already penciled us in to defeat Clemson in the national championship. You know this.
Yeah, so they now don't have their backup quarterback.
Right, and even if we lose, I'll fall back on LSU, Auburn, or Alabama, or Georgia to pick up the slack. Hell, Kentucky might beat every other team in the country as far as I know.
Kentucky is number 5 in the MarkRogersTV rankings this week.
And they should be. You're the only legitimate host on YouTube. I mean, the other guys, they just can't see things as clearly as you can because they should be number 5. Look who they beat. Look what they've done. Just like LSU.
So when Kentucky goes out there in a few weeks, and maybe it'll happen this week against South Carolina, and they lose a game, then I'm going to have a number of people telling me, we told you Kentucky wasn't number 5 in the country. And I'm going to say, well, they were number 5 in the country based on the 4-0 start and 2 good wins against Florida and against Mississippi State. But now they're no longer number 5 because they've lost a game. But while they continue to win and beat good teams and beat them decisively, they're going to be ranked where they should be ranked.
You mean you're going to take the actual performance on the field above what a bunch of bookies in Vegas say?
It's crazy, George, but I thought I would go that route.
Man, that's like going out on a thin limb.
I'm out of my mind.
Out of your mind. You're going by what actually happens on the field. That's crazy, Mark. Don't you see that?
It's kind of been my thing. It's I'm hoping it goes somewhere. I'm hoping somebody actually notices that, hey, Man, we should probably listen to this guy just a little bit. George, have you taken?
You didn't have Florida at number 10, so you're not infallible.
I'm not infallible. I would never claim to be infallible. It's not a perfect system.
I mean,
it's good.
After last week's bad beatdown.
Oh boy, yes. George,
I'm glad you made the bad beat video. That was awesome. I hope other people copy you.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun in a way that was a bit cathartic. It wasn't fun going through the bad beats, but hey, if my pain can serve as entertainment for others, then so be it. George, have you voted for a helmet or two to be displayed?
No, I know you know what I think. If you don't have a Gator helmet up there, it could be a fake football show. You need that logo.
Fake football show?
I'm just saying, if it doesn't have a Gator logo, no one knows it's real. They're like, hey, look, some guy's trying to make a kid's video or something. You better get a Gator helmet.
You know, you're usually an ardent supporter and promoting my work, but I will accept that. I shouldn't be surprised. Of course, you want to see your Florida Gators.
It's the logo. Nobody else has a big old Gator head for a logo. It's just awesome.
It's a logo. It's a logo. But they don't have the logo on the helmet. It says Gators. Well, they switch it up. They've had a few different ones.
They're working on it. The scariest words in college football are "we're playing the Gators this week." It just rings fear in the hearts of men.
George, it's not 2006.
Whatever. We got Dan Mullen. He's a Florida man.
He is a Florida man. I think he was a good fit for this job. It's going to take him a little bit of time.
God, I'm so happy.
A little bit of time.
I'm so happy. I'm happy for Will Muschamp at South Carolina. He was a good fit there. We both agreed to that earlier in talks and comments. This is looking good. Things are looking good. I'm so happy for Kentucky. Just beat South Carolina. I'm afraid they're setting Kentucky up to get their ass whipped by Georgia. I hope not. But it's a good season so far.
Let's look at the SEC this week. Alabama's got a scrimmage game against Louisiana in Tuscaloosa. Arkansas, oh my word, that's a disaster going on right there. They go to Texas A&M. Actually, that game's played in Dallas. They play a neutral site at Jerry's World each and every year. You got Tennessee at Georgia. That's the big CBS game. That's how bad it is in the SEC this week in terms of scheduling.
No, it's not bad. Listen, Tennessee is going to come out like Florida did, and they're going to do a bunch of high-styling, acrobatic shit, get a couple turnovers. It's going to be a good game.
Okay. All right. I'll make my prediction in a few days. Southern Miss.
Listen, Tennessee has better talent than Florida, according to the five-star recruiting services. So anyone that talks shit about Tennessee is crazy. They just need a motivational speaker. That's all.
Well, if you weren't a Florida fan, maybe you can be bought, though, George. What would be your price, even as a Florida fan, to go in there and talk to that Tennessee football team?
Whatever. It's not that. It's just simple, man. Just you need to start fresh and let's go jump higher and run faster, you know?
Southern Miss at Auburn shouldn't be much of a game. Tennessee State at Vandy.
Let's not talk about that. If Auburn loses, I'll kill myself. Good. Next.
And, okay, Ole Miss at LSU. And then the two games that I really want to see.
LSU.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, we'll give that to LSU.
The two I really want to see, of course, your beloved Gators in Starkville against Dan Mullen's old team.
I don't know what to say about this. I say Gators by 3 in double overtime.
Oh, okay. I will definitely have to catch that game.
We'll just go drag on into the night, and then we win by 3 because they missed their touchdown, fuckers.
South Carolina at Kentucky.
South Carolina, Kentucky. That's Kentucky all the way.
Okay, they're at home.
Yeah.
They are at home. Can you see Kentucky at 5-0? Beat Mississippi State, Florida, South Carolina.
Mississippi State.
Wow.
That's not even a coin flip for me. I'd rather be dead wrong than hedge my bet. I'm taking Kentucky because I want it to happen. If Kentucky, by any chance, can beat South Carolina this week, you know how good that makes Florida look. Like, yeah, we lost, but to this badass team. So go Kentucky.
Go Kentucky.
Oh,
All right, George, anything else, man?
No, it's still early, though. I might think of something. I'll talk to you later.
You give me a call. All right. Have a good night.
Hey.
Yes.
Hey, I'm happy for Kelly Bryant. Think about it and then let us know, where do you think he should go? And Jalen Hurts. Can you imagine Kelly Bryant goes to UCLA and Jalen Hurts goes to Nebraska or something? Wouldn't that be awesome?
It'd be kind of cool. Be interesting. I'm going to have to think about that. There are obvious choices. There are obvious choices of teams that are typically quarterback deprived. Those are the obvious choices. I had somebody mention to me today that they heard that Kelly Bryant will not get a scholarship at a Power 5 school. And I said, you got to be crazy. You don't think Oregon State would take Kelly Bryant, or Kansas, or we could go on down the line?
About the inside. I don't know about the politics of all that, but it seems like he sure as hell would.
Yeah.
I'll take him. Rutgers will take him.
There you go, Rutgers. Great candidate for anybody.
Old Dominion will take him.
Yeah, for anybody that can walk, basically. Go walk on at Rutgers and play football. They need some healthy bodies.
Listen, I would forgive Dan Mullen if he took him and we won the national championship, you know?
I bet you would.
So all right. I'm not even going to make a comment. All right, later.
All right, George. We'll talk to you later, man.
Bye.
The incomparable George joins us just about each and every live stream. We enjoy the banter with George. And, of course, again, anyone from our media contingent that would like to jump on tonight, I've had a number of them respond to say that they would, but I'm kind of questioning the communication conveyance to them, that they're not maybe necessarily understanding how things are working in the future. I wrote up an email. I explained the whole deal. This is what we're doing going forward. We no longer have time to be tracking people down and scheduling specific times. That's difficult to do going forward. Therefore, we're doing live streams, and you are welcome to come on. And so we've got our media guests out there possibly jumping on board. In particular, I would like to talk some Miami football with the Canes on the field tomorrow night against North Carolina. So possibly Cam Underwood drops by, as he has been invited from State of the U, and also our guy Alonzo 1219, Dwayne Holloway, the wholesome one. All sorts of Miami guests are out there, and I have sent them the link to jump on tonight, and hopefully we track one of them down. If any of you are in contact with any of our media guests that you enjoy, let them know that we're on from 7 to 9 tonight talking college football. We'll be back on tomorrow night from as early as I can get on. It may even be earlier than 7 o'clock Eastern time on Thursday, because I would like to get as much pregame talk in before Miami kicks off against North Carolina at home. Then we'll come back for halftime. We'll come back for postgame, and we'll talk college football and wrap up Miami, North Carolina, and get you set for a big week 5. Let's see what you guys have on the chat. And remember, the number is 860-325-3687. Here it comes, 860-325-3687. Remember to do your shopping at Amazon, and also use the links down in the description section. You will not see them right now during the live stream, but grab any of the videos that I've posted, and you will see in the description section a link or 2 or 3 from Amazon. It doesn't matter which one you grab. You do not have to buy the product. Just enter the website using the Amazon link. That will contribute back to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. All right, we got a call coming in. You guys wanted a call-in show, so I gave it to you. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
This is Drake Knapp, the infamous Alabama fan.
Oh, Drake. This is the first time that you've called, sir.
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm walking a dog. I'm doing fine.
What kind of dog do you have?
Dog. A Schnauzer.
Okay. All right. I love dogs.
Yeah. Well, I just was calling in to just say I really appreciate you and what you do, and It's fun to listen to all the people, different fans. And I really liked the other night when you were talking about how Gene Stallings talked about how people in Ohio, they think about Ohio like we do Alabama football. And I appreciated that. I thought that was really good.
Yeah, it was fun covering Alabama, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State in particular for 7 years down there firsthand. Of course, I cover them from afar now, but so you're a Tide fan. So how long have you been following Alabama football?
Well, I would say I'm an Alabama fan since birth, because when I came home from the hospital, I have pictures of me in an Alabama like a jumper, I guess you could say. And,
that's beautiful.
And I'm 47. I'll be 48 next month. Sorry.
Well, Drake, what is your first memory of Alabama football? The first game that you really took in and enjoyed?
The first Alabama game I ever remember, I believe it was the Alabama-Ohio State game in 1977, I think. My dad was watching it. It was a Sugar Bowl,
Sugar Bowl, 35-6.
I believe that's what it was, and at the time I really didn't care too much about football. I didn't know much about it. My dad was a high school coach, and I used to go to the games and mainly just play, under the bleachers with other kids and stuff. But that was a long time ago.
Hey, Drake, how good do you think this Alabama offense in particular, not just the entire team, but the offense in particular, is this season versus some of the national championship editions that you've seen under Nick Saban?
I think offensively they're the best I've ever seen, because they have the ability to get the ball to any player at any time, and you have to pick your poison. If you're going to play the run, they're gonna kill you with 4 or 5 4 guys out of the back. Four guys out in the route. If you play, play deep, lead people out of the box, you've got 4 really good running backs they're going to kill you with as well. So, I mean, offensively, the thing we've always missed and hadn't had was sorry, I'm running. We haven't had is somebody that can distribute the ball, and now we do. And as long as he stays upright and he doesn't get hurt, I don't see anybody beating us.
Those are my thoughts exactly.
I'm sorry?
I was just going to say, in regards to not necessarily not anyone beating you, but in terms of the Alabama offense and just taking what is almost always a dominant offensive line, the best stable of running backs in the nation, and those 5-star wide receivers that now have finally a guy that throws the ball to them on time in the right place. And it's just a different animal right now, this Alabama offense.
Now, defensively, I think we can be had, as you've seen. But I think we've got a lot of young, new players in secondary, and that's what scares me. But they're able to take chances, I think, because they know that Tua is going to pick them up if they make a mistake. So it's not like in the old days when you had to worry about we had to squeeze every point, because when people were playing you to stop the run, you couldn't always score like they do now. So now they're a lot more able to maybe take a chance here and there. But anyway, it was good talking to you, Mark. I've got to go. I'm out here with the dog, and he's kind of getting rambunctious. So it's great talking to y'all. I enjoyed chatting with the guys in the live stream chat, Navy and Ohio and NC. I can't remember what his name is, but anyway, it's pretty good. And we'll talk to you later. And I appreciate it, and I love supporting your program.
Absolutely, Drake, and we appreciate your support. You have a great night.
Okay, you too.
Drake Knapp. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Drake joins us in the chat on a regular basis. Big Alabama fan. You heard him right there. Good guy. Walking his dog tonight. Hopefully it's a little bit lighter there in Alabama than it is here in Connecticut, or he's got some kind of detection going on to dodge the cars maybe out there. All right. Let's get to the chat here. Let's see if anybody's got anything interesting to say. But before we do that, another call coming in, and that's what we love. We want to talk to you guys. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
What's up, Mark? It's Big Papi JT.
All right, Big Papi. How are you?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing great. I love talking to you guys. So this makes my day right here, striking up the live stream and getting some phone calls.
So I have just two takes. I wanted to tell you my top 10. I just got done making a top 10 2019 NFL draft prospects video for this month of September, and I'm getting ready to upload it. But I just wanted to get everybody's opinion in the comment section on it. I know I didn't put one player on here for a very good reason, and I don't know if anybody's going to notice, but here's my top 10 2019 NFL draft prospects for the month of September. So,
okay, stop right there, Big Papi. Just we want to get people's attention here. So Big Papi is releasing his top 10 2019 NFL draft prospects, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we want to get your opinion. So leave it on the live chat. Here we go. His top 10 NFL draft prospects for 2019. All right, Big Papi.
So before I begin, I want to say that I'm doing my top 10 prospects based on two things. Based on consistency, because everybody knows that the NFL draft is about 75% about measurables and all. Well, maybe 65% about measurables, combine, how you doing, and all that. But before we get to the combine, it's about consistency. You don't have to have the best production, and you don't have to be a great player, but you have to be pretty good during a certain stretch, at least a 4 or 5 game stretch. It can be early in the season to get your draft stock up, or it can be late in the season. So right now, some of these players are just good right now. A lot of people might have some head scratches, but I'm just going by what I've seen so far. And number one quarterback prospect is Justin Herbert. It's a no-brainer that he's the best quarterback prospect in the nation right now. It's not even close. Drew Lock, you could say Drew Lock, but it's not even close. A lot of NFL prospects, a lot of NFL scouts, and based on what I've been hearing, which is another thing I take into my rankings, the word of each prospect and how much hype they have behind their name. And Justin Herbert, a lot of people are considering him the second coming of Cam Newton. Not only does he have 4.6, 4.7 speed, somewhere around that range, but the man is around 6'5" or 6'6". I'm going to just say he's 6'6". A lot of people didn't think a lot of people knew he was good, but we didn't know how good he was. The Stanford game is a testament of how good that he was. He was exceptional in that Stanford game. I'm pretty sure everybody will agree. And I don't think he's a reason why he's a strong reason why Oregon, even though they lost that game, went up one spot and in the AP top 25 polls. So Justin Herbert, number one quarterback, number one prospect in my opinion. It sucks that when the NFL draft comes around that he might not even go top 10 just because there's not a lot of teams that really are desperate for quarterbacks right now. So it's kind of a bummer, but he's my number one prospect. Number two, I had Joey Bosa. Even though he's injured right now, won't play until November. I feel he's been the best defensive player, tied for the best defensive player in the country right now. We saw that against TCU before he got injured. He was causing havoc. I believe he had the fumble or the safety. I forgot what play it was. I don't know if it was on special teams or on defense, but I think it was a strict sack, and he got recovered for a fumble against TCU. And he's just like his brother, very, very quick, has a great first step, and pretty much solid in everything. The only big concern is the same concern that his brother had coming out of college, his durability concerns. And that's what we're seeing with Joey Bosa. But as of right now, I have him as my second best prospect. My third prospect, you couldn't tie him up with number 2, but everybody knows who it is. He can tackle Ed Oliver out of the University of Houston. Not a lot of people have seen him play. I only seen him play one game, and that was against Texas Tech. And in that game, he was absolutely wrecking the Mavericks. I believe he had like 3 tackles for loss that game, a sack. The dude is unblockable, and he's the new breed of these NFL decent alignment. Like, he's in that Myles Garrett type deal. Very predicted to run like a 4.7 or a 4.8, and he's 270 pounds. And the thing about him, Mark, is that not only he's not really a decent tackle. Many NFL scouts believe that he can play defensive end and be pretty dominant as a defensive end, and they feel that's the best position for him. So my fourth prospect, this might cause a lot of dislikes, well, a lot of raising eyebrows, but as of right now, I have Benny Snell Jr., the running back from Kentucky, as my fourth best prospect right now. He leads the country in touchdowns and rushing touchdowns with 10, and I believe he's the only non-quarterback in the Heisman watch list as of right now. And Mississippi State, if I remember this correctly, has about 9 returning starters from last year on their defense. And this guy had 4 touchdowns against that defense with a lot of experience. And a lot of people consider that maybe one of the top 4 defenses or top 3 defenses in the SEC. For him to have 4 touchdowns against that Mississippi State defense is very, very impressive to me. And I think he's a poor man's Saquon Barkley in terms of how athletic he is. He has very, very good cuts. If you watch the Florida game and you watch the tape of his highlights on that game, you see that he makes very, very sharp Saquon-like cuts. And he's a home run threat. He can take it back the distance, any play. And number 5, I have Greedy Williams, the cornerback out of LSU. Here's what his name is, Greedy. He's an absolute ball hawk. Now, he has a lot of Denzel Ward comparisons, and the reason why he's compared to Denzel Ward so much is because he's not really big. He still needs to bulk up in the weight room. He was 175 last year. I believe he's like 183 or 185 right now, but a lot of NFL scouts are really, really high on him, and I believe he's the only cornerback or a defensive back right now out of cornerbacks and safety that you can say as of right now is an absolute lock for the first round. And I believe if he's able to bulk up, if he's able to get to 190, I feel NFL scouts and general managers would be pretty happy with that. But he's my number 5 overall prospect. Now, number 6, I have another LSU player. I have inside linebacker Devin White. Against the Auburn game, he was all over the place. I believe he had 1 tackle for loss, and he had a key sack. He was unstoppable in that Auburn game. He was a big reason why LSU won that game and upset on the road. Number 7, I have guard/offensive tackle from Tennessee, Trey Smith. When you watch the Tennessee offense play, and the offensive line isn't really that good, but when you see Trey Smith, he absolutely stands out for you. He's like a Quentin Nelson, but he doesn't really have any complementary pieces on the Tennessee offensive line that's pretty much equal to his talent. So basically, when you just watch Tennessee, you just see this guy mauling over people. And we're really, really going to see him get tested against Georgia. I believe they play Georgia this week. He's going to get tested. And I believe he's going to be up for the test. And I believe he's going to lay a lot of people on the ground. I'm very, very high on him. I believe he can. I believe he will go in the top 5 of this draft. I believe he's probably the best guard that we have seen in the past 3 years. I'm that high on him. Number 8, I have Josh Allen, the linebacker out of Kentucky. He's probably the best linebacker they have had coming into the draft since Bud Dupree, who's a pretty decent linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Josh Allen wasn't really balanced last year. He was more of a run stopper, but now he's pretty complete this season. He has 2 sacks, 4.5 tackles for loss. He's a beast for this Kentucky linebacker core. And they also have another pretty good linebacker on the other side of him. Number 9, we have nose tackle Raekwon Davis. Raekwon is another athletic freak on that defensive line with Myles Garrett athleticism. And the dude is 6'6", 215 pounds. And a lot of people believe that this guy can run a 4.9. Now, I don't think he'll be able to run a 4.9 mark, but I believe he'll have a 5'10", and I believe that's pretty elite speed for somebody his size. And number 10, I have wide receiver Marquise Hollywood Brown from Oklahoma. Last year, he wasn't really that polished as a route runner, but this year, he's very improved. And in almost every Oklahoma game, I didn't watch the Navy game or Army game, I believe, that they played last week that they almost lost. But every game I watched, this guy has had a touchdown of at least 60 yards or more. And a lot of these NFL, since the NFL is now becoming a passing league, more emphasis on the running game, and you see more teams implementing the spread offenses. They're looking for guys like him who can spread the field. I give him a comparison to a Brandon Cooks. I believe that's who he plays with. The ultimate deep threat. He's getting better as a possession receiver, as a move to change wide receiver. But I believe he'll mostly be used as a deep threat, similar to a Brandon Cooks. And that's my top 10 2019 NFL draft prospects.
All right, Big Papi, I'm going to ask you this. What did you use to compile your analysis? Was that just from watching it yourself, or did you read other scouting analysis?
I watched most of these prospects myself. When it came to Trey Smith, I had to watch a little bit more of him. It was very hard because it really wasn't a lot of highlights. But most of these guys I have seen actually play. Raekwon Davis, I only seen him play one game, so I had to look up a few websites about him. And that's pretty much it. And when I did this, I went on other websites, but I didn't let their opinions infatuate into my rankings a lot. I just consider that hype, and I believe that's a big part of the NFL draft prospects. It's the hype that these players have around them and the excitement factor that these players have around them that makes GMs make like the Patrick Mahomes type deals and the Deshaun Watson type trades in the draft, the excitement, and that's another factor that I took into my rankings.
All right, we got Big Papi JT on the line talking some college football. He just knocked out his top 10. So with absolutely no analysis attached to it, you need to make this clear, Big Papi. Just run down 10 up to number 1 or 1 through 10. Just run them down, just the name and the school.
Justin Herbert, quarterback, Oregon. Joey Bosa, defensive end, Ohio State. Defensive tackle, Ed Oliver, the University of Houston. Benny Snell Jr., running back, University of Kentucky. Greedy Williams, cornerback, LSU. Inside linebacker, Devin White, LSU. Tennessee guard / offensive tackle, Trey Smith. Linebacker, Josh Allen, University of Kentucky. Nose tackle, Raekwon Davis, University of Alabama. And wide receiver, Marquise Brown, or a.k.a. Hollywood Brown, the University of Oklahoma.
All right, Big Papi JT, anything else for us tonight?
I want to talk about the Miami quarterback situation.
All right.
N'Kosi Perry, I've been covering it very close. I've been making videos about it. N'Kosi Perry is most likely going to be the starter against the University of North Carolina tomorrow in that Thursday game. I believe with him at quarterback, we're going to be like Alabama. We're going to be unstoppable. When you look at our skill position, Mark, we have the most underrated wide receiver group in all of college football. I believe people don't give us the credit that we deserve.
I do. I do.
You do. You're the only person who actually gives us our props when it comes to our receiving core and our skill position. Ahmad Richards is a first-round NFL talent. He was held back by Malik Roser. Now he has N'Kosi Perry, who is actually accurate. A lot of Miami fans say that he's more accurate than Brad Kaya, and they say he might be the most accurate quarterback we have had in the past decade. Now I don't know if he's Brad Kaya accurate, but Brad Kaya, he can hit some people on the money. But Nakati Perry, with him at quarterback, you can tell again if you watch the highlights of the FIU game, FIU didn't know what to do because unlike Malik Rozier, teams weren't stacking the line trying to stop the run and forcing Malik Rozier to beat them through the air. Now you have Nakati Perry, who you have to fear on the ground and running the ball, similar to what people do against Alabama. It's pick your poison. Either you want to get shredded in the passing game by Nakati Perry, or you're just going to get shredded by the two great backs that we have, starting with DJ Dallas and Travis Homer. So it's pick your poison. We're going to be unstoppable. I can't wait for us to destroy FSU next week because that's what's going to happen. We're going to destroy FSU. We're going to roll right through the ACC until we play Boston College. I believe that's going to be a trap game. I believe it's on a Friday night. And even though Boston College got shredded by Purdue, I still think they're a pretty good team with that 1-2 duo they have at quarterback and A.J. Dillon, who next year is going to be probably the best prospect, who has Leonard Fournette comparisons. And maybe Duke, I'm not sure how much of a threat that we can take Duke for, but the last time we played Duke, we almost lost, and we had that little lucky kickoff seed that I'll call it, the kickoff miracle. So I believe that we can win out. We'll play Clemson, and that's going to be the game that we see what Nakasi Perry is, and is he the future of this Miami Hurricanes team against Clemson? That's going to be the ultimate test.
All right, Big Papi JT, appreciate you jumping on the line, talking some Miami football and running down your NFL draft prospects. I've got no feedback for you. I know who you're talking about. I watched all those guys play a ton of football, but the NFL draft is a long, long ways away. And, of course, here at MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, if you guys have been around for at least a half a year to go back to last year's April/May NFL draft, well, we were all over it. So a couple people were... I want to mention here, Big Papi, a number of people were calling in while you were on the line, so please don't give up. Big Papi will be off the line here in just a second. Call right back.
Yes, Mark. I'm surprised nobody mentioned Bryce Love. Nobody in the comment section was surprised about Bryce Love. I left him out because simply he was what all the NFL scouts thought he was. He was a small back, shifty, but injury prone, and he's been pretty injury prone this past couple of 2 games. He's been struggling with injuries, and I think that's going to limit his hype isn't as big as Benny Snell's right now. So I think that the Bryce Love hype train will return later on in the season, but right now is at a minimum right now.
All right, Big Papi. Nice little rundown for you right there. I appreciate it. Yeah, that Florida State game was the game of the year in the ACC for Miami, if we were talking a month ago. But now there's a number of teams looking a lot better than Florida State right now. Of course, you got to deal with Virginia Tech, and we don't know about the Hokies now that we saw what happened last week. And Josh Jackson, of course, his situation. Duke, you mentioned them. Duke looking good. Georgia Tech, who knows? They haven't looked so good, but maybe they get back. I just think it's a jumbled mess. Virginia beat Louisville by 24 points last week. We'll see what we've got in the Coastal. It could go right down to the wire, maybe. You guys have the best talent, the best roster, but if you don't play your A game, or if you play, let me rephrase that, if other teams play their A games against your B- or C+ game, then it could be interesting.
Yeah, before you let me go, can you tell me what ACC division that Boston College is in? Because I think that's going to be the toughest game we played this season, besides Clemson ACC championship.
Boston College is in the Atlantic Division,
so we don't have to worry about them. Well, in terms of our division,
you're playing Boston College, so they're on the schedule.
Okay.
So you play everyone in your division, and you play 2 teams from the other division, and one of those teams is always Florida State. Then the other game rotates between BC, Wake, Clemson, Louisville, North Carolina State, and Syracuse. So you played Syracuse last year. This year it's BC.
Okay.
And it rotates.
I think that's going to be a pretty good game too. That's going to be a good game to watch. But FSU, my last word on the FSU game. It's going to go from game of the year, the blowout of the year, And my final prediction is going to be Miami 45, FSU 17. And the only reason FSU scored 17 is because Miami puts in the reserves.
Okay. All right. All right, Big Papi. Appreciate it. Big Papi feeling good about his Canes despite the butt kicking against LSU and pretty lackluster play, since he believes N'Kosi Perry in the lineup will mean a huge difference in the Miami offensive fortunes, which they certainly could, because we've been talking about Malik Rocher around here as much as any player in college football and his limitations and inabilities to play quarterback at a high level. The Coastal Division, folks, what do we think about this? We came into the season believing Miami was the best team. Virginia Tech, most people believe to be the second best team, and then a jumbled mess with everybody else, and it not really mattering because it would come down to most likely Miami winning. And if there was any challenge, it would be Miami slipping up somewhere and then going to Blacksburg and losing to the Hokies. Now we have seen Miami look lackluster, although the one loss is against LSU, a top 5 team in the nation. But they have yet to really prove themselves against anybody good. Probably the best team that they've played out of the other 3 would be Toledo on the road. And yeah, they won the game by 25 points, but it took them until the fourth quarter to get that done. It was a 1-score game for much of the second half. And we've seen everybody else look lousy in the Coastal. Virginia Tech, so win on opening night against Florida State, not looking so impressive now, especially in light of Old Dominion putting up 49 points on the Hokies. The best looking and most consistent team in the Coastal Division, starting from week 1 through last weekend's play, by far most consistent. I'm not saying they're the best team. I'm not saying they're the most talented team. That's Miami. The most consistent team has been Duke. Duke went to Northwestern, beat them by 2 touchdowns. Duke went to Baylor, won by 17 points. Those aren't great football teams that they beat. But Northwestern's going to be a bit of a factor in the Big Ten Western Division. It's a solid team. And to go up there to Evanston and win by 2 scores and dominate defensively in that game, to go out to Baylor, a team that turned around and beat Kansas last week by 19 points, which isn't necessarily the joke that it was last year and the year before and the year before and the year before and the year before. And for Duke to go out to Baylor, once they lost Mark Gilbert, their best cornerback, and lost Daniel Jones at quarterback, and still went to Baylor and won by 17 points easily, Duke has looked very impressive. And we will see what we've got coming up this weekend in the ACC, because we've got tons of important games. All right. Let's go to the schedule. So let me ask you guys this. It's Wednesday night. We will be back with a live stream, as I mentioned, prior to North Carolina and Miami kicking off tomorrow night. And we'll come back at halftime. We'll come back post-game. But in the meantime, I will be producing a few previews and predictions for Saturday's play. Let me know what teams, what games you want to see a preview and prediction on. Ohio State, Penn State for sure. Stanford, Notre Dame for sure. I've got to deliver those 2 at the least. Helmets. What 2 helmets do you want me to purchase? So on October 1st, I will purchase 2 helmets, and they're going to be determined by the helmets that are listed in the comments section, not just on this video, on any video. The helmets, the 2 helmets that are voted on the most, I am going to purchase on October 1st and get them on display. And maybe a little better lighting for the helmets. Maybe we'll get another light. I'll buy a 3rd light, and we can light up the helmets a little bit better. We'll get it somewhere in here. Yeah. The helmets are looking a bit dark and dingy, I think, over my shoulder. A couple more lights would be good. Maybe a floodlight here, TV talk from the bottom up to light the back wall. All right, 860-325-3687. And we believe that Cam Underwood will be joining a little bit later tonight from State of the U. I contacted Cam yesterday. He responded favorably. I said, jump on the line anytime after 7 o'clock Eastern time, and sent him the link, as well as media contributors all over the place. Do you guys follow me on Twitter? You people on Twitter? If I didn't follow college football, I don't think I would be on Twitter. Twitter is a bit annoying at times. And so I don't do a whole lot on Twitter. I post my videos. I make some comments. I interact with some people on Saturday and Sunday. I actually probably make more comments during the NFL games on Sunday on Twitter than I do with the games on Saturday, because on Saturday I'm sitting there, I'm trying to watch 4 games at the same time. I'm taking notes. I'm preparing for the instant analysis that we do on the live streams here. So I can be more of a fan on Sunday afternoon, just watch the NFL games, and I make a few comments on Twitter. If something really, really gets to me, I'll make a comment, but I don't sit on Twitter. I like watching the red zone and taking in all the games on Sunday. But if you guys are on Twitter, follow me there. If I don't follow you back, it's because this is my criteria for following people on Twitter. I basically follow people that first follow me, and then I check them out. And if they've got some kind of platform or site, then I follow them. Except for you guys. I will follow you on Twitter, but you may need to nudge me and say, hey, Mark, you promised to follow me. So just go ahead and do that, and I will follow you on Twitter as well. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hey, it's Mark. Who's on the line? Hello. Who do we have on the line? Yes. Who do we have on the line? Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Oh, hey, Rob. It's my first time calling. This is, I said, hey, Rob. I'm sorry. My name is Rob. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Rob. What's going on, man?
I'm calling from Denver, Colorado.
Yes, sir. What's your handle? I'm just curious that if I've ever seen any of your comments.
I'm a sense of humor.
I'm sorry. What's your handle?
Sense of humor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
How you doing tonight?
Good. Just almost off work, and I said this is my first live I'm attending with you. You know, I wanted to tell you that, you know, I have called in on shows before, not your shows, other YouTube live shows, and I want to say that, you know, you seem pretty polished, man, as far as your analysis.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. How long have you been watching?
I've been watching you for at least 3-4 years.
Oh, really?
I watch your predictions and everything. Yeah, you do your predictions, and I just now kind of caught on to your live shows, but I used to watch your videos.
Okay, 3 or 4 years. All right, very nice. Who's your team?
We're tied.
Okay, I thought so. All right. What's on your mind tonight?
I wanted to talk to you.
Yeah.
What was it? I saw that Kelly Bryant transferred.
Yes, he did.
I wanted to know what team you think he's going to go to, and if Trevor Lawrence has a few hiccups, do you think the team is going to unravel and Dabo might lose control of that team? Because I know a lot of that D-line, like I remember they asked Christian Wilkins in the beginning of the season, who's your quarterback, and he said Kelly Bryant in a heartbeat. So I think there might be some people on that team that may not be too happy that Kelly Bryant left, even though Trevor Lawrence is obviously the better passer.
So we speculated in the offseason, knowing that Clemson was by far the best team in the conference and certainly the best in the division, that Dabo Swinney might have this exact situation. We talked about it a number of times. He may have an undefeated football team. I didn't necessarily think that he was going to make this play this early, but maybe 7 or 8 weeks deep into the season, maybe the offense is not performing to the level that he would think, i.e. the situation that we've seen at Alabama the last 2 years with Jalen Hurts versus Tua Tagovailoa, and that he would determine, okay, yes, we're 8-0. Yes, we're going to win the ACC. Yes, I'm going to get to a college football playoff, but I want to compete and win the championship of the playoff. Therefore, to do that, I need to pull the plug on Kelly Bryant and go with Trevor Lawrence. I expected this move to come about 4 or 5 weeks from now, but here it is. And here is Kelly Bryant announcing his discouragement over the situation in transferring from Clemson. Now, where is he going to go? I have not given that any thought. I was at work all day. I heard the news bits and pieces throughout the day, and I have not really given that thought. I will give it some thought. We've got Mike McDaniel from ESPN Blacksburg coming on the line. Maybe he'll have some thoughts about Kelly Bryant's situation and where he may be a good fit. Certainly, there are a number of schools out there that would love to have his services as a talented athlete who can throw the ball maybe a little bit better than what he's given credit for. Now, in terms of Dabo leaving or having an issue with the locker room, I just think that he has probably, maybe not with this specific team, but overall in the program, about the best morale. He has built about the best environment of a big-time college football program that I've seen. And I just have to think that, yes, players aren't always going to agree with a decision, but I think they trust the decision maker. And I think that he will stabilize that situation. And if he has to have those heart-to-heart talks with some of his leaders in the locker room, then he's going to have that. And I think he's got their trust and he's earned their respect. And I don't see that being an issue myself.
I wanted to throw out a few teams.
Sure.
Nebraska. How does he not go to Nebraska? They need a quarterback.
Sure.
I mean, man, Nebraska, UCLA, and I forgot the other team. Also, what was I going to say? Okay, comparing Clemson with Trevor Lawrence's offense and wide receivers to Ole Miss wide receivers.
Oh boy, yeah.
We handled them. We handled them pretty good. Would you say they're kind of close?
I think they're real close. Yes, between DeMarcus Lodge and Brown. And yeah, it's a pretty good comparison you got going there. Absolutely.
Okay, so Bama doesn't have to worry about Trevor Lawrence and those wide receivers because we already went to Ole Miss and handled that. That's all I wanted to know. The
only difference between those two wide receiver cores, I would say, is that the top three at both schools are pretty comparable. If for whatever reason you had to go past the top three, the Clemson keeps a couple other guys on the bench that were 4- and 5-star recruits as well. That'd be the only difference. But in terms of the guys that are on the field that need to play most of the time on the field, and maybe you can't account for Hunter Renfro's gamesmanship and just his ability to play in the clutch. Maybe you can't account for that.
I hate that.
That's difficult to measure.
I hate that. Okay, Roger. Thank you. I enjoyed it.
All right, Rob. I enjoyed it as well. You have yourself a great night.
Okay.
It was Rob joining us. Sense of Tumor was the handle there, as he's been watching us for 3 or 4 years. And for about the past 3 or 4 years, we've had Mike McDaniel on from ESPN Blacksburg. You can also join his work at Inside the ACC. Mike, how you doing tonight?
What's going on, Mark? How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Mike, fortunately, has been able to take the curveball and hit it. Because the curveball tonight, as I explained, Mike, to my viewers and listeners, was that we're no longer necessarily scheduling guests on a regular basis. We'll do our live streams and send out the link. And Mike picked up on that, and we appreciate that. Mike, Kelly Bryant, you may have heard the last caller and his thoughts about Kelly Bryant. Your thoughts about the Clemson situation, both in terms of Bryant moving on and the situation that they have with Trevor Lawrence being the guy. And now this is the second star quarterback, Bryant with the experience, Hunter Johnson not so much, but with the 5 stars next to the name, that has been disgruntled and moved on.
Yeah, I think it's a big deal. I do. You know, Clemson doesn't beat Texas A&M without Kelly Bryant. Trevor Lawrence is an outstanding player. He's going to be an outstanding quarterback for Clemson. He's already shown his ability in spurts throughout the year when he's gotten in the game. Obviously, he's got a ton of upside as a passer and a guy who can really stretch the field, extremely accurate, and he's a good decision maker, as displayed through his play throughout the year so far. Dabo is obviously comfortable enough with what he's done both on the practice field and the games he's played in so far to announce that he's a starting quarterback. Clemson, I think, needs Trevor Lawrence and his passing ability late in the season when they start playing against teams with defenses that can amplify the flaws in the passing game that Kelly Bryant possessed. I think Trevor Lawrence, even though he's a true freshman, obviously has great ability to throw the football down the field. That's clear. The problem is that I think they're going to miss Kelly Bryant's leadership. I think they're going to miss his ability as a runner at the quarterback position. I think he's a better passer than a lot of people gave him credit for. And he's been in a lot of big-time games on the biggest stages. And that's something you can't quantify when you're throwing a true freshman into the mix. Clemson is in a great spot to make a run at a national championship. They have a great defense. We know the defensive line, how good that is. They got playmakers all over the offense, even though it's a pretty young group overall. Playmakers everywhere, including Trevor Lawrence. Great running back in Travis Etienne, and he's a guy who's just scratching the surface. They got a loaded backfield with a lot of guys who are capable of producing. This is an absolutely loaded team with an excellent coaching staff. Dabo Swinney, in my opinion, is the second best coach in college football behind Jimbo Fisher. Or not Jimbo Fisher, I'm sorry, Nick Saban. So we're in this situation now with Clemson where it's going to be a wait and see. I don't think there are enough teams in the ACC right now who can really push Clemson. It's a very mediocre at best conference at the moment. I'm not sure where a loss is going to come for Clemson in the regular season, if it does at all. We're really not going to know how big of an impact the loss of Kelly Bryant is on this team until late in the season, in my opinion. I'm talking ACC championship where they'll be heavily favored against whoever they play. College football playoff against whoever they play in the semifinal. And then if they're fortunate enough to get into a national championship, is a true freshman in Trevor Lawrence, while he's an outstanding talent, is he good enough to guide the Tigers to a national championship? And if he is, then this will be proven to be the right decision. If not, I think Dabo's going to be kicking himself because, look, Clemson was in this spot where they were playing both quarterbacks. Everything was going really well. No controversy really at all, in my opinion. You had two guys who really complemented each other very well. And I don't think Dabo had to make this move. But now that he's done it, and it's Trevor Lawrence's show, we're going to learn a lot about the true freshman, especially if the games get tight and the offense goes stagnant at any point. And Dabo's not going to have the luxury now of turning to a guy off the bench that he can trust because, you know, Kelly Bryant's now departing to another program. We'll just have to wait and see.
And it's a good point that you make about the mindset of Trevor Lawrence playing the games that he already has. And obviously, to date, the most pressure-packed situation he's had to face is a tight game, but always with a lead, but a tight game at Texas A&M in front of a hostile crowd. But he had the support of a Kelly Bryant who basically led the team down the field during most of those scoring drives. And Kelly Bryant, unfortunately, the public perception, the fan perception of his performance throwing the ball downfield came, I believe, on the strength of two games. The championship game and the ACC against Miami, in which he was not asked to, nor was there any need for him to throw the ball downfield. They were clearly the dominant team, especially on that night, and it was such a rout so quickly that he became a running quarterback, protector of the ball, and that's what the game was. And then most notably against Alabama, and he just really did not have a whole lot of help. He didn't play well, but that Alabama defense was beating down anybody on that field at that point, the way that they were playing. And they were just a dominant defense, and particularly in that game. Mike McDaniel from inside the ACC also does the pregame work for Virginia Tech as a guest analyst there at ESPN at Blacksburg. Mike, I had a number of people comment to me this week. You got to have that Virginia Tech guy on. He's got to explain what's going on there. What happened?
Yeah. I think we found the sophomores. Let's put it that way. This is a team that's, 75% of the roster is sophomores or younger. I don't want to be an excuse maker. Old Dominion played an excellent football game. Blake LaRussa, fantastic. Really good game. They have an NFL talent at receiver. With all that being said, Old Dominion is an 0-3 team coming into this game from Conference USA. Virginia Tech is a 28.5-point favorite on the road. There is no excuse. Bud Foster's defense gives up well over 600 yards of offense, the most ever for a Bud Foster defense. I think this was a case, Mark. It's hard to chalk up these types of upsets to really any one thing, but I think on the surface, it's young kids buying into their own press clippings after beating Florida State. I think that's really what it boils down to. William & Mary was bad. You had that game at home. You have a week off against East Carolina that you weren't necessarily expecting to have. And Justin Fuente said, well, it's easy to say this after the game and after you get upset. But there were a couple practices in there where, they weren't performing perhaps to the best of their ability. And Justin Fuente said he and his staff had to remind the guys, hey, I like the way, you put forth your effort in practice when everybody was talking about how you never had a chance in the first game of the year. And everybody was talking about how bad you were. So I think this was a case of, the sophomores get a couple wins under their belt. They're 2-0. They get a week off. Everybody's kicking back, having a good time. You're number 13 in the country. You got Old Dominion. Why are we worried about an 0-3 team from Conference USA? And then they got beat. And that's what it boils down to. Bigger deal for me moving forward. Josh Jackson, of course, gets hurt in the football game, breaks his ankle. He's out indefinitely. Ryan Willis, a backup. He played at Clemson. I'm on a roll tonight, Mark. He played at Kansas. Excuse me. Had more interceptions than touchdowns at Kansas, so that's not a great stat. But he's looked okay. Looked okay in the spring. Looked okay when he came in relief for Josh Jackson late in the game against Old Dominion. So Tech will roll with him, and he's a little bit more of a gunslinger, so the mistakes will come, right? So there might be a little bit more excitement with the offense, especially in the passing game, but there will inevitably be more mistakes because he takes more chances than Josh Jackson does in the passing game. So, yeah, so he's this new starter quarterback, and maybe an even bigger deal, Trayvon Hill, Virginia Tech's best defensive player, arguably, dismissed from the team, the starting defensive end. Rumors of a fight in the locker room. That's what the beat writers were tweeting about. I don't know how true or untrue that is, but he was on thin ice for a number of off-the-field issues to begin with, including in the offseason when he tweeted at Andy Bitter, the Virginia Tech beat writer for The Athletic. Trayvon Hill was tweeting at him for fairly reporting the facts in the Mook Reynolds case. Mook Reynolds, of course, Virginia Tech's another defensive player on Bud Foster's defense, who was dismissed in the offseason for what ended up being drug charges. So Trayvon Hill skating on thin ice with the coaching staff. There was an incident after the Old Dominion game, and now he's no longer with the program. That's the bigger deal to me coming out of this game, is that Virginia Tech loses a key player on each side of the football, one being the quarterback, Josh Jackson, and one being their best defensive player, arguably, and their starting defensive end, Trayvon Hill. I think that has a bigger impact moving forward than anything else coming out of this football game.
All right, Mike, as you know, in the Coastal Division, we could have been having this conversation and did for months and months and months. And the conventional wisdom was Miami's got the best team. They've got the best roster. It's not even close. Pencil them into the ACC championship game. If something happens and they slip up, especially since they've got to go to Blacksburg, well, Virginia Tech is clearly the second best team in the Coastal Division. And then it really doesn't matter. Everybody else is all jumbled up. Maybe Georgia Tech could make a play for the division, but we've got a lot of bad teams, a lot of mediocre teams. But here we are. And granted, we have not played a lot of ACC games. We are just starting to dip our toes into the conference schedule. But we've got a situation where Miami has not been dominant against mediocre competition. They got trounced by LSU in week 1. We're questioning Virginia Tech's performance against Florida State because of what the Seminoles have not shown us. We're seeing a Duke team that's not been overwhelming, but when are they ever going to be overwhelming? But they've been extremely consistent and had 2 really good road efforts. And we've got even the likes of Virginia winning a game against Louisville in conference play. And certainly the Cardinals are down, but they win it by 3 scores. And what do you make of this Coastal Division? It could be a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, the Coastal's a ton of fun. The Atlantic is no picnic either. It's literally a juggling act trying to figure out who's good, who's not. Let's start with the Coastal because that was the question. Miami looks like a different offense when N'Kosi Perry looked pretty good last Saturday. Let's see if that continues moving forward here. Miami starts playing better competition in the ACC. If Perry gives them literally anything in the passing game, Miami is clearly the best team in the Coastal, in my opinion. They have the experience at the skill positions, a great defense. They're very exciting on offense. They got Amon Richards. Everybody's, that whole team's good on the offensive side of the football. Mark Richt, an established coach. Miami's got all the pieces if they figured out quarterback play, and it seems like they might have done that. So let's see if N'Kosi Perry can continue that. That's something that, of course, Cam Underwood's been talking about for literally a year and a half. It's give N'Kosi Perry a chance, and all he does in his first real appearance of meaningful playing time is complete 75% of his passes, go well over 200 yards, and throw a few touchdown passes. So pretty solid performance there. So there's Miami. Duke, back in the top 25. Obviously, Daniel Jones got hurt. They have Quentin Harris, who's a junior at quarterback, same year as Daniel Jones. He's been pretty good, a little bit limited in the passing game, but makes a lot of plays with his feet. Big one this weekend for Duke, of course, hosting Virginia Tech. And I think right now that's your battle for second place in the Coastal Division. Virginia Tech, of course, lays an egg against Old Dominion. Still trying to figure out who they are. It's a Jekyll and Hyde type situation, but they have a lot of question marks, of course, with quarterback, a young defense, and you're coming off of a pretty ugly loss to Old Dominion. So how good are the Hokies? We're going to find out here in the coming weeks. Georgia Tech off to an absolutely terrible start. They've been very bad this year so far, so that's obviously a problem. Pittsburgh, they're garbage. They just lost to North Carolina. North Carolina, garbage. They lost to East Carolina out of conference. They're really bad. Surprise team in the Coastal so far, Mark, Virginia. Virginia's been pretty good, of course. They've lost to the only decent team they've played against. So how does that come into play here moving forward? Virginia's got a big one this weekend against NC State, a team who we're still trying to figure out a lot about as well. So keep an eye on that. Flip over to the Atlantic Division. Boston College, thought they might be good. Blown out against an 0-3 Purdue team. Granted, Purdue was a little bit better than their record, in my opinion. They lost a couple tough games to open up the year. A lot of playmakers on offense, highlighted by Rondale Moore. If you haven't seen him play, unbelievable receiver.
Yes.
Receiver, returner, you name it, he does it. He's unbelievable.
Turn down Alabama, Ohio State, the usual cast of characters to go to Purdue.
Yep, and I love it. Purdue needs somebody exciting like that. So BC loses to Purdue, they get blown out. Clemson's Clemson, they're the class of the conference. They're very good. Florida State, who are you? Probably not very good. They have Louisville this weekend to try to get back on track and get a winning record. Speaking of Louisville, they're trash. Can't get anything out of either one of their quarterbacks right now. They're simply not very good. NC State, think they might be good. Only problem is we would have found out a lot about them 2 weeks ago if they had played West Virginia in a game that showcased arguably 2 of the best quarterbacks in college football, and Ryan Finley and Will Grier. Of course, we were robbed of that because of the hurricane that went through. Weren't able to see that game. NC State could very well be the second best team in the Atlantic Division. Then there's Syracuse. Syracuse keeps winning, but they haven't played anybody. They're playing Clemson this weekend in Death Valley. Think they might get murdered because, in my opinion, it's a get-back game for Clemson. Trevor Lawrence is throwing into a god-awful secondary, and Syracuse hasn't played a defense like this quite yet. They could be pretty bad in this football game, and we'll see if they really make any headway moving forward. Wake Forest, work in progress, pretty poor defense. up-and-coming offense. Sam Hartman, true freshman, he's taking his bumps and bruises, but I think overall the future's pretty bright for them. They got a pretty good running game. Not much else to say about Wake Forest. I'm sure there's another team I'm forgetting in there, Mark. I'm just rattling them off, but it's a mess. The ACC is a disaster. ACC is a disaster. It's really, in my opinion, Clemson than everybody else. I thought it was that way anyway, Mark, but I think the gap is even wider than we expected. Clemson is way out in front, and then it's a couple of decent teams, Miami, BC. Still think Virginia Tech's okay, even though that was a really ugly loss to Old Dominion. Still think they're going to be fine. So there are a couple like decent teams, and then there's Clemson, and then the rest of the conference, in all honesty, not very good. I guess I should have thrown NC State in there too, but we'll find out what they're made of as well.
Yeah, so the NC State-West Virginia game was my under-the-radar big-time matchup of the season that I really wanted to watch, and as you mentioned, we were deprived of that. The ACC, I just couldn't believe it after a few weeks that I really was looking at the results and really couldn't come up with anything positive there. Even Clemson's the biggest win for the conference is beating Texas A&M, and that's from the team that should beat them, and they only beat them by 2 on the road. And then after the results coming in from last week, and between 2 and 5, meaning the numbers 2 and 5 conferences in the nation, my rankings were razor tight before last weekend, and that just kind of pushed the ACC to the bottom, considering what happened with Boston College and Virginia Tech in particular. All right, Mike McDaniel from Inside the ACC. Also join him. He's on the Virginia Tech pregame show on ESPN Blacksburg, so you can join him right there as well. Mike, we appreciate you stopping by, sir.
All right, thanks, Mark. Appreciate it, man.
All right, of course, the college football world braces for Penn State and Ohio State coming up this weekend. It's been a titanic battle that has really ruled the Big Ten and defined the Big Ten for the past 2 seasons. Of course, the Buckeyes coming back from 18 down in the second half last year to upend the Nittany Lions and decide the division and finally the conference. And then 2 years ago, of course, it was Penn State, kind of the crescendo of their move back to the pinnacle of college football in the Big Ten with the win on the special teams plays in Happy Valley 24-21. We bring in one of our longtime guests here, Tim Aten from Black Shoe Diaries on the SB Nation platform for Penn State football. Tim, how you doing tonight?
Doing good, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Great to see you.
Likewise.
Tim, this has to be a difficult week just in regards to there's so much buildup and so much hype, and it's Wednesday night, and you probably just can't wait for the game to just get here.
Well, precisely. I'm already thinking about how this time tomorrow night I'll be driving up to Happy Valley, getting up there about a day early. But yeah, the game, obviously, I think ever since the final seconds ticked off the clock in Champaign, Illinois last Friday night, this game has been on the minds of everyone. Although I would argue, I think for us fans, we were thinking about this game probably 2 weeks ago. But for the players, for Coach Franklin especially, as you know, he likes to tweet out the opponent's name about 50 times at the beginning of the week to emphasize, we're only focused on the opponent that's coming up. So this week it is about Ohio State, Ohio State, Ohio State, Ohio State, Ohio State for him and the players. As far as, the matchup's concerned, this is a battle between the top 2 scoring offenses in college football right now. And I kid you not, if you think I am pulling your chain, you can look it up. The number 1 and number 2 scoring offenses are facing off in State College Saturday night. So that's something in all my years of watching Penn State football, I can't recall a matchup of 2 titanic offenses like that. So one would naturally expect, especially considering how shaky the defenses have been, particularly on the Penn State side. It would not surprise me if both teams cross 40 points Saturday night.
MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, talking of the big matchup in the Big Ten. It has been the matchup of the year the past 2 years. We expect no less here in 2018. Penn State hosting Ohio State in Happy Valley for another whiteout. against the Buckeyes. We've got Tim Aten on the line from Black Shoe Diaries. Of course, we've got the live chat in full session, so please leave any comments or questions you have there. I'll be monitoring. Otherwise, Tim and I will talk up the Buckeyes and the Nittany Lions. There was a lot of panic, at least on my channel, after the App State game, considering you needed the final drive of regulation with Trace McSorley expertly leading the group down the field for the game-tying touchdown, and then, of course, the win in overtime preserved by the interception in the end zone. But the team has obviously performed much better since, and to the standards that you would have expected.
Oh, precisely. And I think in retrospect now, we've played a few games. App State's played a couple more games since then. I would say I think App State was the toughest non-conference opponent, and probably the toughest opponent we've faced thus far. I'm pretty sure it's going to change on Saturday, but yeah, if you noticed, App State's crushed their last two opponents in Charlotte, and I have to look up the other team real quick. I think Gardner-Webb. They put up 72 on Gardner-Webb, which is, something you'd expect to see that from a Power 5 school playing a thing like Gardner-Webb, and for App State to do that, Group of 5 school, it kind of sends a message. But interesting stat from their other win against Charlotte, their quarterback, Zach Thomas, was a perfect 14 for 14 before he got pulled from the game in favor of the second stringers. So he may actually be a pretty legit quarterback. It may not just be Penn State's got problems in the secondary, which they kind of do, but beside the point.
Tim, in preparing for the game, I was checking on Trace McSorley's numbers and looking through the entire team, both offensively and defensively. I saw the Illinois game almost start to finish. I saw App State last couple drives in overtime because of what was happening right then in college football, obviously, with other games seemingly being more important. Than suddenly, wow, Penn State's in a struggle. Had to check out the end of that game. And that's what I've seen out of the Nittany Lions. But I was a bit surprised to see 54% next to Trace McSorley's passing stats because the offense has been so prolific. Has there been an adjustment in the passing game minus Deshaun Hamilton and Mike Gesicki?
I think a lot, and I think that stat is due in a large part to cases of the drops from normally reliable receivers like Juwan Johnson and DeAndre Tompkins earlier. The first couple of games. Since then, both of them have started to get on the right track as far as actually holding on to the ball. Juwan Johnson, most notably, last week against Illinois, came up with a very clutch touchdown grab in the fourth quarter when Penn State was still clinging to a 28-24 lead. I think they had just gotten penalized after Trace McSorley supposedly caught a touchdown on a trick play, but they called it back because of illegal formation. I think it's a legal formation penalty. So they called it back. It's third and long, and Trace just fires a nice dart to the end zone. Juwan Johnson grabs it between a couple defenders. So I think he was a leading receiver, actually. 4 catches, 51 yards, and that touchdown. So, he had definitely stepped it up in a manner that we were hoping he would starting from game one, but better late than never. Tompkins, of course, got it going against Kent State, caught a touchdown there. But, yeah, in a way you could say they do miss having a guy like Deshaun, who is a very sure-handed person that you could rely on. And, of course, having a tall target like Mike Gesicki certainly helps you in the red zone. Although I say now they've traded in exchange for Gesicki's catching abilities. They've actually traded that for tight ends that are actually good in the blocking aspect of the game. That was the one big knock on Gesicki, is he was not a very good blocker. But a couple guys in Jonathan Holland and Pat Freiermuth. Freiermuth, shout out to him. He had his first career touchdown grab against Illinois as well in the early going, and he actually he was wide open at the 5-yard, caught it and almost lost his footing going into the end zone. He fell and barely got in, but because he was so excited, he saw nothing but open space. But so there's definitely young guys that are finding their way, and it's also just a matter of the more veteran receivers who got off to a slow start, and now they're starting to, I think, hit their stride. But that has affected Trace's numbers in a way. I think if they were able to catch earlier in the year, I think his numbers would be probably in the 60s at least.
And I'll back up your shout out to Fryermuth, because he actually joined us here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, while he was still in the recruiting process. So we appreciate the conversation there. So yeah, you folks that follow Penn State football, you can look back at yesteryear before the decision was made and look up one of the videos. Also, of course, to get yourself primed and ready from a Penn State perspective on the Buckeyes and the Nittany Lions, you go to Black Shoe Diaries on the SB Nation platform for Penn State and join Tim and the rest of the crew there. As I'm sure that you guys have talked to the Ohio State clan as well to get that half of the matchup and set up that side of it as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I haven't talked too much to Ohio State folks, but I guess that you bring it up, I do have an interesting story to tell. It's sort of off topic, but not really, because it does involve this game. I was, since Penn State was played on Friday night, I had Saturday free. So, like any responsible adult, I went and did grocery shopping at my local Wegmans, and I'm passing by, like not just Wegmans, but any store, they have the people passing out samples of stuff. So, this guy I'm passing by offers me a chicken cacciatore sample. So, of course, I take it. And it was delicious. And then he sees I happened to be wearing a Penn State shirt that day, and so he sees it. He asks, "Did you go to Penn State?" And I say, "Yes," because I'm an Ohio State alum. And so then we just get into talking about the game. It was basically a 5-10 minutes back and forth about what scared us about each other's teams. So for me, I was telling him, I'm concerned about the defense's ability to contain Dwayne Haskins, and especially the ground, that 1-2 punch of J.K. Dobbins and Mike Weber. And then meanwhile, he's scared to death of the whiteout atmosphere and of Trace McSorley. So it was a very interesting back and forth, very cordial, wish each other best of luck kind of thing. But so that's my main interaction with Buckeye fans this week. I know on Black Shoe Diaries, we have someone who does cross-blog interviews, so that should be going up probably tomorrow, I would think.
So, yeah, that's a great thing about college football, in addition to a lot of other things, that kind of shared camaraderie, at least out of the 98% that are sane and love their team, but still can settle it down, pull it back, not to unleash the venom, and actually have a fun conversation with a rival fan base, and appreciate and have respect for the other fan base and for the other team, and know that, hey, this is a really good program. This is a great all-time program in the case of this matchup. And, this is going to be fun, regardless of how it turns out. Most likely this is going to be another great football matchup. Now, Tim, we've talked about it a number of times. We've had you on for, something like 3 to 4 years. And at the time, we kind of knew it and saw it. But even in the aftermath of that game in 2016, it's played out. Now, if James Franklin sticks around for 10, 15 plus years, that might turn out to be the watershed moment for this program, because it certainly looks like it right now. Now, you have to build on that, and they did. But if James Franklin continues to have a program that's going to rank in the top 10 in the nation year in, year out, and going to contend for Big Ten championships and possibly national championships, then that seems to be the game where they took everyone on notice that, hey, we're back.
Well, precisely. I wouldn't say it was the first sign, but it was definitely the 2016 game as Ohio State was definitely the moment where Penn State announced to the college world, like, hey, we're back. And, it was nice to see them finally get back in the top 25 after that win, get back in the national conversation. Because for many years before that, they were talked about, but they were just kind of like an afterthought. You just kind of mentioned them in passing, unless it was something, scandal related. So that was the first time where people were really talking about them, as a legit program, like being amongst the big dogs in college football again on the field. success. So, and of course, what Franklin's about, he's won, he's something like 22-5 overall since that game. So, I mean, that you could say that was a big turning point. I mean, I'd say the first turning point was the Minnesota game a few weeks before that, when they were trailing 13-3 at the half. And then Trace froze this. He escapes the pocket, and then throws a dart to Irvin Charles, who doesn't even really see it coming, but just kind of looks at the last minute behind him and catches the ball, and then races to the end zone. And they eventually win in overtime. But yeah, that Ohio State game was the second spark, and probably the biggest spark of all. And so yeah, it's crazy to think that was already 2 years ago. Sometimes it just feels like that happened yesterday still. And now, here we are, it's just like top 20, being in the top 10 just feels like a routine thing. I say it feels like, I do feel like I've been following the team since I was about 7-8 years old, early 90s. And I'd say this, I feel like a kid again watching the team in the 90s, where you routinely expect them to win, 9-10 games a year. It is a good feeling. But like you said, I think the next step, that's also a very hard step to take, is to be able to take out, Ohio State on a I shouldn't say on a more routine basis. Because if you're going to win get to the playoffs, you win national championships, I feel that the road right now runs through Columbus, Ohio.
It certainly has. Losing 8 games in 7 years is pretty much the landmark of a program that's pretty much dominated the Big Ten since Urban Meyer showed up. And the 1 or 2 losses that he's had at particular times in conference play is basically taken his team out of the college football playoff. So that's how razor close it's been to Ohio State absolutely just going to the college football playoff every year. It's taken the Penn State play, which obviously still ushered the Buckeyes, despite that situation, into the college football playoff. Although Penn State won the Big Ten, I'm thinking of the Michigan State loss the year before, in which Ohio State still finished in the top 4 in the nation when it was all said and done, but missed the playoff there. As you mentioned, you talked about going to the grocery store over the weekend and having that conversation with an Ohio State fan with your Penn State shirt on. For being neutral here, Tim, you see this shirt, it lines up pretty closely. It's on the mark, I would say, in regards to color scheme.
I say it's got a bluish tint.
Bluish tint. This looks Penn State blue. I think I nailed it here. Ricky Slade, Miles Sanders, and replacing Saquon Barkley. How do you think that's gone?
I think it's gone quite well, actually, especially Miles Sanders. He had his obviously had a big game against App State, scored what would be the game-winning touchdown in overtime, but Illinois last Friday was where he really had his coming out party. Rushed for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, and he just looked. He was just moving piles, running around, cutting around people. He just looked like a unstoppable force. And him and Trace McSorley were like a powerful 1-2 running combination. It seemed like they kept the Illinois defense guessing on the read option every time. They couldn't figure out which one to focus on. They usually guessed wrong as far as who to try and bring down. And it showed Penn State ran for 380 yards, which was the most they had done since 2002 against Michigan State, which I don't know if you know this. We probably remember this game, but it was when Larry Johnson became the first Penn State player to go over 2,000 yards in the season. So that was the game where he did that. And actually, Sanders' performance, 200 yards and 3 touchdowns, he's the first Penn State running back since LJ in that same game to put up those to go 200 yards and score 3 touchdowns in a game. And I think Curtis Enos and Kajana Carter were the other 2 backs who've done it in the last 25 years.
Yes,
So
Penn State running back lore is quite impressive, and Larry Johnson, of course, during that early 2000s period for that 2002 team. And I'm trying to think who won the Heisman Trophy. Carson Palmer of USC. I would love to go back and look at the numbers because Larry Johnson, as you mentioned, it's not like Carson Palmer led a national championship team at USC. They had a good team. They went to the Orange Bowl. They won, so they had a top 6 or 7 team in the nation. But Penn State, sure, they lost a couple more games, but it wasn't like Larry Johnson lost a Heisman to a national championship winning quarterback. So I would love to go back and check out those numbers because, of course, as you mentioned, Larry Johnson was just racking up ridiculous amounts of yardage that particular season that ended with a loss to Auburn in the Capital One Bowl, if I remember correctly, like 13-9.
Yep, to Auburn.
Yes. All right, we got Tim Aten on the line talking Penn State football with the Nittany Lions in the big showdown against the Buckeyes of Ohio State. And unless something else happens drastic in this season, this would appear to be, and there are going to be other huge games involving, of course, Michigan and Michigan State and these two teams, but this would feel to be the one that's going to set the tone for everything else we're going to see. These are the two best teams in the conference as it stands right now. You talked about the defensive play or lack thereof. On the Ohio State side, certainly they have one of the top 5 most talented defenses in the country. They've had their slip-ups. TCU made them look bad for the most part for about 3 quarters until they really kicked it into gear and disrupted the plays in the backfield and kind of willed their way to a win, and much of that was on defense. On the Penn State side, do you think that this is the Penn State defense we're going to see the rest of the year, or do you think that they have the pieces in place to shore up the defense and be a very capable top 10 or 15 type of defense?
Well, it is unfortunately kind of a little more inexperienced defense, and especially at the linebacking unit, they've been hurt. The years of recruiting misses and guys transferring has kind of hurt the depth there. So, Brent Pryce tried to make the most of what he has. Manning the middle, so you have Jan Johnson starting at the Mike spots. Then you got Cam Brown on the one side, and then you got Koa Farmer on the other side. Brown is probably the most athletic at starting group, but he does have issues sometimes with being out of position. That's also been issues with the other 2 backers at times. There's also a couple freshman studs, Micah Parsons, who rocks LeVar Arrington's old number 11 jersey. Him and Jesse Luketa, both true freshmen, have seen their share of action. Parsons, you just see it on the field. He just has such great athleticism, but just like he also has problems of being out of position on certain, which has led to, teams being able to pick up big yardage on the ground. Teams that maybe they otherwise should be able to stop, but they have found themselves with trouble stopping the run, at least in the first half of games. You saw it against Pitt. You saw it again against Illinois. They have, to their credit, been able to adjust in the second half and eventually get some stops. The D-line, you got Yetur Gross-Matos and Sharif Miller, especially, who's probably the best guy in that, leading that unit right now. He picked up a couple of Robert Windsor picked up a sack against Illinois. Miller picked up a couple against Kent State the other week. But Miller had the most amount of hype coming into the season, and he's been doing a pretty good job living up to that. Secondary, that's also, they've had their moments, like Amani Owari has come up with a few big-time interceptions, including the one against App State in overtime to stave off the upset. But they've also given up some big plays too, and it saddens me to see John Reed, coming back from that ACL injury which caused him to miss all of 2017. It's just clear right now he's not what he used to be. Maybe in time he can get better, but he was getting burned a little too often. Picked up a bad pass interference penalty. So I look for Tariq Castro-Fields to start in his place opposite Oruwariye. The safeties, I'd say the biggest improvement I've seen so far has been from the safeties. Garrett Taylor especially. He's gotten pretty comfortable out there now. He's become solid in run supports and just a very hard-hitting guy. And same with Nick Scott, both starting safeties. So that's a positive there. They just got to be able, if they can, the key to this game, I think, is can they get any kind of pass rush at all at some point during the game? Because especially in the second half when they're clinging to a small lead. Can they get enough pressure on Dwayne Haskins and force him to actually try and beat them with his feet? Because he's known right now he's like the opposite of JT Barrett, I would say. He's got a very good arm, not the fastest guy, but very good arm. Whereas Barrett was more of a runner type. So the key is can they pressure Haskins? Can they contain Dobbins and Weber enough where they're not running wild on everybody? If they can do that, they've got a chance.
Yeah. So point well taken on the Barrett Haskins comparison. I'll bring it a little bit more to the center where Barrett more run heavy than pass heavy. Haskins the flip opposite of sorts, but not on both ends of the spectrum. It's not like JT Barrett's service academy quarterback who can't throw it and Dwayne Haskins can't run at all, that he's not mobile. He doesn't want to run. He's a pass first guy. He's mobile. He can move. He can get out of the pocket. And JT Barrett's not Michael Vick. I will make mention of a lot of people who have been detractors of JT Barrett through the years. Despite his prolific numbers at Ohio State and what he was able to accomplish, the guy is on the roster for the New Orleans Saints right now. So one of the most credited offensive minds in the NFL saw fit to draft him and bring him on board in Sean Payton. So JT Barrett is not necessarily the scrub that many people play him out to be. That said, this Ohio State offense, much like what we've seen with Alabama, is just a different breed now with Dwayne Haskins pulling the trigger back there. He can really stretch the defense. So it's going to be, what we saw of JT Barrett in the fourth quarter against Penn State was a bit of an aberration of what we saw out of JT Barrett out of the last couple of years that he played in college. But out of Dwayne Haskins, this is pretty much what he brings each and every week. He's throwing up like 21 for 24 and 30 of 33 type passing games against these teams. Certainly not Penn State caliber, but still Power 5 teams. He's been tearing them up thus far. So it's a challenge.
Absolutely. I mean, every time we were watching the other team's quarterbacks get big pass plays on us, especially in the first half, me and my Black Shoe Diaries colleagues in our Slack channel kept saying, if we play like this against Ohio State, Haskins is going to have a field day against us. And so, I mean, I don't know what more I can say about him, and the bevy of receivers they've got. I mean, Paris Campbell, McLaurin, I forget his first name, Austin Mack. I mean, it's just a deep collection of blue chippers like a never-ending supply of blue chippers. It seems like at the receiving spots and tight ends. So, to have a trigger man like Haskins, be able to throw to all those guys. I mean, like I said, the key is they're going to have to establish some kind of pass rush, throw Haskins off balance. Don't let him get comfortable in that pocket.
All right, folks in the live chat, please trash talk about college football, not any personal attacks there. So I don't want to have to monitor the live chat and kick people out, but I'm hearing about a number of comments going back and forth that would not be. Take Tim's story from earlier in the segment here. He gets together with an Ohio State fan at a grocery store. And are they picking a fight? Are they, sticking their thumbs in each other's chests and getting into it? No. And does Tim like Ohio State? Hell no, he doesn't like Ohio State. And this other guy doesn't like Penn State, but they can still have a nice conversation and appreciate what we have here talking college football. It's a great thing. And if you don't have the other team, see, here's the deal. You can't play. See, if you don't have another team to play, they're kind of integral to the entire sport here, because otherwise, if you just have the good guys, then you don't have any bad guys to play against. So that kind of is what makes it fun. So please just be respectful of people in the live chat. Tim Aten, you got to join him and the rest of the crew there at Black Shoe Diaries on the SB Nation platform for Penn State football as the Nittany Lions try to take a huge step toward winning the Big Ten championship. I saw some numbers that seemed rather obvious to me, Tim, that let's wrap our minds around this, that if Penn State wins, it will increase their chances to get to the college football playoff. And if Ohio State loses, it will decrease their chances to get to the college football playoff. Inversely, if Ohio State wins, it will increase their chances to get to the playoff and decrease Penn State's chances. So I saw this over and over on Sunday and Monday, and I thought, who are they taking us for? We understand, the team that wins will have a better chance of making the playoffs, and the team that loses will decrease their chances of making the playoffs. You don't have to beat this into our heads. We get how the program works here. All right, Tim, we appreciate it. We hope you enjoy the game. Have a safe trip up to Happy Valley. Enjoy the whiteout, the game. The atmosphere is unlike any other. Urban Meyer called it one of the top 5 in college football this week, and certainly he has had to experience the wrath of the whiteout, and it's been a tremendous game here the last few years.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that's Tim Aten from Black Shoe Diaries on the SB Nation platform for Penn State, and joins us on a regular basis to talk Nittany Lions. And of course, Penn State will have a number of other challenges down the road with Michigan State in particular. They also have Wisconsin traveling to State College later this year. Talk about making a difficult trip, going from a little matchup with the Florida Gators in division and then having to turn around off a bit of a shellacking and going to Athens, Georgia to take on a team that knows nothing but 4- and 5-star talent. A difficult assignment for one Jeremy Pruitt and his Tennessee Volunteers. We've got Mike LaValle from Last Word on College Football on the line to talk Tennessee football. Mike, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good, Mark. How about yourself?
I'm doing just fine. Wow. So I wanted to see Tennessee and Florida play. I had it on DVR. I'm just trying to think, a 7 o'clock kickoff. So some of the 3:30 action spilled into that window. And by the time I got around to that game, it was starting to get ugly. It was just a turnover fest in the first half.
Yeah, if you missed the first quarter, you kind of missed the story of the game. Tennessee's offense just couldn't get anything going. 6 turnovers total, 5 by the offense, 1 on special teams. The brutal opening kickoff return of the second half that just killed any possible momentum of getting the ball first in the second half. It really wasn't pretty. You talked about following the Florida game up. The reason the Florida game was so important, Florida having lost to Kentucky, having not looked super strong against their group of 5 opponents. Now Tennessee faces a stretch where they played number 2 Georgia, number 10 Auburn, number 1 Alabama. So the next 3 teams, total rankings of 13. Total ranking of 13. And then they go to South Carolina on the road after Alabama. South Carolina, presumably the 2nd or maybe 3rd best team in the SEC East. So it's not like it gets much better after Alabama. South Carolina, Kentucky, and Missouri. Missouri, those 3 teams, any of those 3 teams could be the 2nd or 3rd best team in the SEC East. So that's why that Florida game was real crucial for Tennessee to try to get their first conference win in 10 games. As it stands now, Tennessee now has a 10-game conference losing streak, facing 3 of the top 10 teams in the nation in the next 4 weeks.
Yeah, so I don't know if anything could have been done about that. If you try to arrange a schedule, it's extremely difficult. It's, even though I think it should be corrected at times and certainly point out the issues that we have with the schedule, I do admit that it's more difficult than it appears on the surface. And so maybe that couldn't be avoided, but I would hope maybe somebody would point that out, that you're playing 3 of the best teams in the country in a row. And that's difficult for anyone to make it through. But that's the
with Tennessee. With Tennessee, it's a little bit of a unique situation. Tennessee actually has quite a few rivals. The Alabama game is generally always it used to be always the 3rd Saturday in October. It's now fluctuates between the 3rd and 4th Saturday in October. Florida is always the 3rd, or usually the 3rd September. I'm sorry, the 3rd Saturday in September. Your Kentucky and Vanderbilt matchups are always at the end, and Georgia is usually on the first half of the schedule. So you have it for Tennessee. You have about 5 games they're pretty much slotted every year in the same spots because Tennessee has so many rivalries. The crossover game is almost always where it is this year. So depending on who they draw from the West, last year, 2 years ago, it was Texas A&M. And then you have the South Carolina game, which in the past few years has kind of found a home in that week after Alabama. So for Tennessee, with Florida on the schedule, Alabama on the schedule, Georgia, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt, those games are almost always in the same place on the schedule. So it's kind of hard to fit the other ones in. You get your two of your three out of conference games up front before Florida. And the Tennessee schedule is kind of set up to be brutal like that every year, just because of who we play. Our permanent crossover in the West is a rival, and then the three teams we have rivalries with in the East, really the four teams we have rivalries with in the East, kind of set. Those games are kind of set every year in the same spot.
Mike Laval joining us from Last Word on College Football as we head toward Week 5 in the SEC. It's Georgia hosting at Tennessee. Before we move on with the matchup, Mike, for anyone joining Last Word on College Football for the first time, how can they kind of navigate the college football experience there, and what can they find?
Yeah, so check us out, lastwordoncollegefootball.com. We try to appeal to the discerning fans. We don't really do the recap or analysis. The recap or the previews of the recaps. We try to give you opinion analysis and informed, even-keeled opinion analysis. Lastwordoncollegefootball.com. You can follow us on Twitter at lastword on CFB, or you can follow me at MikeL_LWS. We'd love to have some of your viewers check out our site. We think you'd enjoy it. So come on over to lastwordoncollegefootball.com.
So, Mike, it's impossible to have the goal of a victory at Athens. Now, it wouldn't be the greatest upset in the history of college football, so it is possible, but it's not realistic for Tennessee to go there and win the game. So what would be a step in the right direction for you?
Yeah, so, 31.5-point spread, so that tells you kind of what Tennessee is up against. Here's what Tennessee fans want to see. They want to see improvement. First and foremost, they want to see improvement on the offensive line. Secondly, they want to see a little bit of attitude. They want to see the team come out and play hard. If you look at the first play in the Florida game, first offensive play of the second half, Florida's offense, after the fumbled kickoff return, the Florida runner just kind of ran through the Tennessee defense. There wasn't a lot of effort to tackle that guy. So Tennessee fans were kind of give a little bit of time before they question the effort, but it was not pretty. That's the first play after the fumbled kickoff to open the second half was not pretty. So Tennessee fans want to see, first and foremost, improvement on the offensive line. That's where Tennessee has to improve the most. Secondly, attitude. They want to see a team go into Athens. They want to see a confident team, a team that still believes in themselves, knowing full well that the odds are against them, knowing they're playing a better team, knowing this Tennessee team's not where it needs to be, but still a team that represents the orange and white, represents Vol Nation as they should. And then they want to see a little bit of consistency. They want to see the defensive backs making the right making the right coverage calls in the secondary, executing those. They want to see execution on the offense, the lack of turnovers. If you look at a couple of the turnovers from last Saturday, it was just poor execution, guys in the wrong spot. Just poor execution. So first and foremost, improve play on the offensive line. Secondly, attitude, and third, execution, making the right calls and executing those calls.
For as bad as those mistakes were and as ugly as that game got as quickly as it did, when I checked in, I can only think of one specific example, but I know that there was a span of some play there in the first half where I caught about 5 or 6 plays in which Tennessee was that close to getting back into the game. Like it's 16-13 and it could have been 16-10. And the one that sticks out is, of course, the trick play where the tight end catches the ball and goes down the left sideline and he's about to score and he fumbles the ball through the end zone and they've got a sure touchdown and it's gone.
Yeah, so that was the fullback Austin Pope, on the classic fullback wheel route, dusting off the playbook there. Yeah, that was shades of Pick Howard against Georgia 6 years ago, where Tennessee loses in overtime. Pick Howard's going in for the game-winning touchdown, extends the ball, loses the ball about a foot from the pylon, and the ball goes through the end zone about a centimeter on the other side of the pylon. Tennessee ends up losing that game to Georgia in overtime. Same kind of situation there. Austin Pope is diving, trying to get the touchdown, even though he's on the 2-yard line. The ball gets out of his hands, goes through the end zone, and clearly the correct call. And Florida gets the touchback and the possession, one of our 6 turnovers. So, yeah, that's a critical point. If you look at the onside kick, Tennessee should have had that recovery. There was one Florida guy within 15 yards of the ball, and there were 3 Tennessee guys. One of those guys has to hit the Florida guy, and the other 2 guys would easily catch the ball. That would have been another added possession. Then if you look at the kickoff return, so Tennessee, 2 of the Tennessee turnovers gave Florida the ball inside the 10-yard line. One of them was a touchdown, a pick 6 off of Garantano pass, a failed screen attempt. And then the third turnover I'm talking about is the kickoff return fumble, which gave Florida the ball inside the red zone again to start the second half. So, yeah, there were a couple times when Tennessee had the opportunity to kind of seize momentum. In the first half, you're thinking, hey, this might turn out like Florida 2 years ago with 35 unanswered points. You start the second half thinking, hey, we can still come back from this. It's going to be a long way. We just have to get one score, get the momentum back on our side, get the crowd back into it. And then they fumbled the opening kickoff. So it's exactly like you talked about with the fullback wheel route where he fumbles in the end zone. There was an opportunity there to cut into the lead and kind of get the momentum. There was the onside kick where we could have stolen possession and possibly been able to do something on offense. And then the second half opening kickoff, and that was really the end of the night right there. But, yeah, so there were opportunities that the Tennessee team just couldn't capitalize, whether they weren't ready, whether they weren't ready for the game, or whether they weren't ready to handle the pressure and the expectation, or if they're just not ready to execute at a high level. It's one of those 3 things, and Tennessee fans have to figure out what it is.
Just 1 second, Mike. Okay, when I've got my Tennessee guest here, I, of course, have to display the Tennessee helmet. Mike Laval from Last Word on College Football joining us to break down Georgia and Tennessee, look at the SEC and the nation. And we let Mike pretty much take this wherever he wants because he's got a great grasp on, particularly, again, Tennessee, the SEC, and the nation. Now, Kentucky's done some work. I was certainly surprised by the score against Mississippi State, not just winning the game, but as a close to 10-point underdog, dominating that game defensively. They go to Gainesville, they win by 11. If they beat South Carolina at home this week, I'm not proclaiming this team to be the challenger to Georgia, but it turns into a really nice story of a team that could really do something really nice this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you, I was very surprised with the effort against Mississippi State. If you look at Mississippi State's defensive line, it's one of the best defensive lines in the nation. And Kentucky was able to win that game and get a lot of rushing. Benny Snell, I think, is like Ralph Webb last year. I think Benny Snell is probably the most underrated running back in the country. Now, I know that's a bold statement for a running back in the SEC when you have a lot of talent on the West Coast that people don't stay up and watch. I understand that. But I certainly think Benny Snell is one of the more underrated running backs in the country. It worked for Kentucky. And for years, Kentucky, it just hasn't worked when they needed it. A lot of bad luck in Kentucky. If you look at just their losses to Florida over the last 10 years, you can make a Lifetime drama movie out of that. And then you look at the second half collapse against Louisville 3 or 4 years ago. I think they had a game. The Hail Mary, the LSU Hail Mary, 6 or 7, 8 years ago, where LSU wins the game on the last play. So Kentucky has seemed to have been snake bitten for like the last 10 years. As Stoops gets that program better, they got new. They renovated some of their stadium. They got some brand new facilities there in Lexington. They've made a commitment under Stoops to get that program better. They haven't seemed to have any luck. It seems this year that they're starting to have that luck, breaking the streak against Florida, putting together a complete dominant game against Mississippi State, who is a consensus top 20 team in the nation. Certainly, I think Kentucky's in for a good year, a solid year. I want to see. Certainly, they're not ready to challenge Georgia. Georgia is clearly head and shoulders above everyone else in the SEC East. What I want to see Kentucky is how they handle South Carolina, how they handle the success, and then I want to see them against a pass-heavy offense, Missouri. To me, I think right now Missouri's probably the number 2 in the SEC East, but I think that game against Kentucky is going to really tell us. Missouri was much like Tennessee. They had a chance to kind of go after Georgia, and they had some inexplicable turnovers as well, which really stymied their ability to stay close to Georgia. But if you take those turnovers out, I think Missouri makes that game against Georgia in Columbia. I think they make it a little bit closer. So yeah, on Kentucky, this might be their year where they catch a break or two, and then maybe finish second or third in the SEC East. It's going to be interesting.
And anytime I assess turnovers, I have to see the turnovers. So the Georgia-Missouri game I did not see initially. Being the knucklehead that I am, I found myself either a night or two later watching like the 30-minute cut down in bed on my phone, just because I thought I want to see how this played out, because I know that Georgia jumped out. They were generally up by 2 to 3 scores. But yeah, there were a number of those turnovers that were not forced by Georgia. It was a bad read. It was a bad decision. It was just a lost football, a dropped football, deflected, where the back or the wide out should have caught the ball that was going to hit him right in the forehead.
Right in the face.
Just like Iowa losing the other night, they had a chance to come back in the final drive against Wisconsin. Boom. It's a quarterback interception, but the back could have caught the ball running the little crossing route over the middle. We'll get to the Tennessee situation just in looking at the overall personnel here, because I'm going to convey and clean up a question or comment here on the live chat left here by 2KJ, who says Pruitt got all of Jones's players, aka garbage. So my cleaned up version of that is, please give your best analysis of the players inherited by Jeremy Pruitt and the talent level of the roster.
Yeah, so I'm not sure I buy into this narrative. If you look back at Butch Jones's recruiting classes, they're very highly ranked. In the 247 composite, there's talent in Knoxville. I think when you look back and you talk about what Jeremy Pruitt inherited, I think it's not so much about talent as it is about culture. Butch Jones kind of had a way of running his program, and it was his way. And Jeremy Pruitt comes in, and clearly Jeremy Pruitt is trying to establish a different culture in Knoxville. The Butch Jones culture, it's kind of hard to put your finger on what that culture was. It was kind of a marketing culture. It's kind of a little bit of a hype culture. I think there was a little bit of fakeness to it, a lack of genuineness in the Butch Jones culture. I think it was kind of a bit of a facade, and that's not what Tennessee is. Jeremy Pruitt comes in, he's focused on football. He's not focused on winning the press conference. So I think it's not so much about the talent he inherited as it is about the culture and the condition of the program from a holistic perspective. The talent is there. It just needs to be coached up. The other thing I would tell, I've kind of been talking about this with Tennessee fans over the past week, is I think for Tennessee fans, it's time to stop blaming Butch Jones. Certainly the program, last year, worst season in program history, and that's not hyperbole. First time ever we had 8 losses. They had 8 losses. First time ever they went winless in the conference. Certainly when Butch Jones left, the program was in a bad spot. There's no doubt about it. There's no doubt about it, particularly from the culture perspective, like I was talking about. But look, this is Jeremy Pruitt's team. He's been here 9 months now, and he's responsible for what this program does. I'm not saying Butch Jones left the program in a good position. Clearly he didn't. I'm not saying Tennessee should have kept him. Clearly they shouldn't. It was time to move on from Butch Jones. But the more Tennessee fans continue to blame Butch Jones, continue to focus on Butch Jones, it doesn't do Tennessee fans any good to look backwards. Tennessee fans have to look forward. It's Jeremy Pruitt's team now. And the biggest thing, the easiest thing for a coach to change is culture. You can't take a guy who's bench pressing 325. You can't get him to bench press 450 in a couple months. You can't get a guy who's running a 4.840 to run a 4.540 in 3 or 4 months. You can change the culture very quickly. You can do that as a head coach. So again, I'm not calling for Butch Jones to return. I'm not saying Butch Jones is better than Jeremy Pruitt. What I am saying is it's not going to do Tennessee fans any good to look backwards and continue to blame Butch Jones. Whether it's right or wrong, Tennessee fans need to look forward and talk about what Jeremy Pruitt needs to do to get this team competing for division championships, which is what Tennessee fans expect out of their football program.
Mike, we are 4 weeks deep into the season, looking at week 5, and most of the conferences will now dig the trench and dive into conference play. We had this discussion about a week ago concerning best conference, and it's clearly the SEC right now. And I had few people beat up on me following those statements and ranking the conference as the best. I don't know how that could possibly be considering the results on the field this year. It was difficult to distinguish 2 through 5, but I had no issue with distinguishing the SEC as number 1 on the field this year. So we've had that discussion. Unless you have anything else to add to it, I'm going to lay it out more as the first 4 weeks are in the books, and what really stands out to you as being the storylines that intrigue you thus far that you want to see play out across the nation.
Hey, I'm buying in. I'm buying into the Power Six, Mark. Jim Tranghese has me. American Athletic Conference to me is a Power Six conference. North Carolina just beat Pitt, and East Carolina, a third quartile team beat North Carolina. Cincinnati is 4-0 with a big win over UCLA. I got it. UCLA isn't the best team in the Pac-12, but they're still a Pac-12 team. And let's face it, Cincinnati is not a top quarter team from the American Athletic Conference. USF has a nice win against a Power 5 opponent. UCF will get another chance to prove themselves this week. UCF coming in, riding a 14, 18-game winning streak. So when we talk about conferences, I'm telling you, it's time to think in terms of Power Six. Now, of course, they're never going to officially make, or at least for another, how long is the contract run? For at least another 10 or 12 years, you're not going to have a Power Six. But when you talk about quality of conferences, the American Athletic Conference is right there. When you look at the quality wins and the quality losses, they are right there. Now, when you look at the bottom quartile, which is, we've had this conversation before. When you look at the overall strength of the conferences, you got to look at the third and fourth quartile. With Tulane, not Tulane, but when you look at the bottom quartile of the American Athletic Conference, they're not there with the other conferences. But if you look across the board, the American Athletic Conference, it's time to start talking about them as a legitimate Power Six conference. They are that good, and they've proven it on the field this year in their matchups against the Power 5 teams and against the other teams of the Group of 5. They are a legitimately good conference.
Interesting. So what we've seen in the past is 1 or 2 teams to be able to separate themselves and challenge the big boys. But as you mentioned, the depth is there. So you mentioned 3 or 4 outcomes that are meaningful. And as I look at the standings, another 3 or 4 or 5 are popping into my head. South Florida, certainly Illinois is not good, but they're a member of the Big Ten, and South Florida won that game. Again, UCF this week against North Carolina. Temple beat a Maryland team by 3 touchdowns. That has won the rest of its games, including a win over Texas,
which is 3-1 in the top 25 now.
And speaking of Texas, they only beat Tulsa 28-21 at home. SMU, yes, the final score, they got blitzed by TCU, but for a half, it was extremely competitive. And we would expect an SMU to get blasted by TCU, but midway through the third quarter, it's a 14-12 game. So they stood up for themselves and accounted and acquitted themselves rather nicely there. And finally, the one that comes to mind in reviewing this, but plus putting it together with the results that you shared, Houston bludgeoned Arizona easily. 38-0 was the score in the fourth quarter of that game.
It wasn't even that close. It should have been. They had 3. I watched that game. They had 3 touchdown passes dropped, absolutely dropped. That game should have been 77-0. Houston absolutely owned that game, and that they absolutely took their foot off the gas halfway through the second quarter.
The American Conference, there it is, and we know what we saw last season with Central Florida against Auburn. In addition to that, Memphis, Iowa State, 1-point game in the Liberty Bowl. Houston's been a team that's done this for a number of years. Their most notable wins in recent times against the Lamar Jackson-led Louisville team twice, and also beating Florida State in the Peach Bowl. So interesting.
Yeah, so when you talk about the group of 6 leaders historically not being invited to the big games, that's because the argument's always been, well, they might have 1 or 2 signature wins during the season, but their conference schedule allows them to kind of float through the season. When you look at the body of work that the American Athletic Conference has put together, particularly the first 4 weeks this year, if you have a UCF or USF that goes undefeated as the American Six champion, it's going to make a really hard argument against keeping them out of the CFP unless you have 4 other undefeated conference champions. The body of work that the AAC has put together is very impressive early on and should be considered as a Power 6 at the end of the season.
Mike LaValle from Last Word on College Football, breaking down Tennessee, the SEC, and the nation with us. Please join him and the rest of the crew. That's got to be a giddy Kevin McGuffey at this point with his Kentucky Wildcats at 4-0. I believe he mentioned to me the other day for the first time since 1977. 2-0 in the SEC.
Yes. In my lifetime, I have not seen a Kentucky team 4-0. Check out our Heisman rankings. He's really excited about that. They'll be published tomorrow. I think Mr. Benny Snell will make an appearance on that. I don't know. I may or may not have seen all the ballots, but I think Benny Snell will show up for the first time on our early season Heisman rankings. Hey, while you're at it, Mark, while you're messing with the helmets back there, you might want to transfer out that Clemson helmet.
Yes. Kelly Bryant can swing by and take that with him
wherever he goes.
Yes, and he would not want to keep it. He may want to do something else with it. I don't know.
I think that just illustrates the era of college free agency that we're in with the new red shirt rules. You're only going to see this more. It's going to create a lot of problems for coaches, but it's also going to create problems for other players, your second tier players. Because here's the bottom line: if Kelly Bryant wants playing time, he's going to have to go somewhere else, and he's going to have to take someone else's starting job. So he's going to have to do exactly what he thinks has happened to him at Clemson. He's going to have to go to another team. And again, one of the reasons why he's transferring is so he can get playing time to get to the NFL. So he plans on going to a major program. But when he goes there, he's going to take someone else's job. And what's that player going to have to do? He's either going to have to earn the playing time, or he's going to have to transfer somewhere else if he wants to play. So I think it's really interesting how this 4-game redshirt rule has affected what was already a burgeoning free agency market in college football. Now, instead of it being a graduate transfer free agency market, it's really a redshirt free agency market. It's going to change the game, I think, that we grew up with and that we know significantly.
Yeah, one of my staple arguments used to be, and no longer can be, one of the great things about college football is, unlike professional sports, whether you're a Celtics fan and you hate the Lakers or the 76ers, well, your guy could be playing for them next year, and take that to all the other professional sports. But in college football, if you're an Ohio State fan, your favorite player will never play for Michigan or Auburn, Alabama. Well, we've never seen it necessarily quite come to that.
Well, Joe Burrow did transfer to LSU, and now he's leading LSU into the top 10.
Yeah, maybe they play a semifinal game against Ohio State.
Burrow versus Haskins. That's got drama written all over. The networks would love that. The networks would love for Joe Burrow to come in from Ohio State, quarterback LSU to a win against Alabama, and then meet up against Haskins and Ohio State in the CFP semifinal. They would love it. They would absolutely.
Although once you get to a college football playoff semifinal and you've got the brand names of Ohio State and LSU, I don't know that you can get anybody else to watch. The people that are going to watch are watching already.
Burrow versus Haskins, Ed Orgeron versus Urban Meyer. that would be a marketer's dream. North versus South. It's a marketer's dream.
Okay, Mike LaValle from Last Word on College Football. It's always a pleasure, sir.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having us. And again, check us out at lastwordoncollegefootball.com. Thanks for checking in on MarkRogersTV. Pleasure.
Absolutely. All right. Again, Mike LaValle, please check him and the rest of the crew out there. Last Word on College Football. I'm going to stay on the line for a few more minutes because we've got one more guest coming on the line, Savannah Lee Richardson from Bulldog Illustrated, who will give us the other half of the Georgia-Tennessee rivalry and the big game coming up. Big game. I've got to call it a big game. It's Tennessee and Georgia. It sounds like a big game, but it's a 31-point game according to Vegas. Georgia at home against the Tennessee Volunteers, coming off that shellacking at the hands of the Florida Gators at home. Our number is 860-325-3687. That's 860-325-3687 if you'd like to call me and ask me anything about college football. The audio version of our show right here you can find on Google Play, Podbean, iTunes, and Stitcher. Just search Mark Rogers TV. I'm attempting to get all the video transferred to the audio. I do most of it. I'm able to get to most of the video content and strip off the audio and send it to the audio podcast, but I do at times miss a few, so I apologize for that for those of you that depend on the audio. Of course, the newsletter is taking off, and I'll take your comments and suggestions as well on the newsletter so it can improve and get better, and it will. But right now, it's the Voice of College Football released each and every Monday to our mailing list. So just send your email to MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. And of course, like, comment, and subscribe. Subscribe to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. As you can see and hear, we bring on the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry. And of course, there's analysis from myself as well. If you know the YouTube process, if you know the online process, you know we can build a platform, we can thrive, we can survive, and we can do much better than that. We can prosper, all based on your interaction, your likes, your comments, and your subscriptions. So please bring me subscribers. If you know of college football fans out there, whether you know them personally as family and friends or just our social media acquaintances with people, bring them to the Voice of College Football, the voice. Your voice, you've got a voice. My voice, the voice of the best bloggers, broadcasters, and writers in the industry right here at Mark Rogers TV. And of course, join the helmet contest. Whichever two helmets are commented on the most between now and October 1st, I will add those to the display. So select the two helmets that you would like to see most, in addition to the 6 that already are on display on the set. The 2 that you would like to see the most, leave those in the comments section, not on the live chat because I'll miss it. But choose any video and leave your 2 helmet selection on the comments section, and I will add those helmets that receive the most votes. Also, keep in mind that we've got these Amazon links that help out the channel as well. So just when you shop on Amazon, use one of the links that you will find in the description section to enter the site. You don't have to buy the products, just enter the site, Amazon, using one of the links. Of course, we've got our top 25 that makes sense out. Please check out that video as well as our conference rankings. Previews and predictions coming up this week on Ohio State, Penn State, Stanford, Notre Dame, any other games that you want to see previewed and see our specific predictions on those games. Leave those in the comment section as well. Games that you want to see me break down and preview, leave that in the comments section, as we've got a call to 860-325-3687. Wow, that's Mark Rogers TV's line here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
The call will start at the beep.
Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hi, Mark. It's Jared. 2KJ.
2KJ. How are you tonight?
Doing good. How about you?
I'm doing just fine. What's on your mind?
I wanted to ask, how do you think Georgia will be really good? Like, I know they're already pretty good, but how good do you think they can be in the next couple of years, knowing the fact that their recruiting classes for the past 2 years have been super stacked with 5 stars?
Okay, take what we saw last year, which was over the course of the entire season, the best team in college football. Now, let's not mistake that with the team that won the national championship on the field in Atlanta on the national championship game night. But Georgia played the most consistent football from game 1 to game 15, and they won the SEC. They beat an Auburn team that earlier beat them by 21 points, and they disposed of a number of teams along the way, including going to South Bend and beating Notre Dame. Georgia was extremely good. Now, the one thing that they lack this year as compared to last year, and we'll see if this comes up and proves significant later in the season, is the experience factor has taken a hit. It's a very young football team. That doesn't mean that they can't win the whole thing this year. But Kirby Smart is building a culture that we've seen similar to Nick Saban at Alabama, but also Dabo Swinney at Clemson. He is building something that's kind of a little bit of the old school, but also a bit of the new school, in building an environment, a culture there, and bringing in elite athletes. So it is suddenly cool, chic to play at Georgia. And this recruiting train that he has rolling right now is rather impressive. And so as long as he is able to recruit at this level, and there seems to be no stopping him at this point, this will be an elite football program. It will be one of the top 4 or 5 programs in the country.
Yeah, I agree. One more thing is, who are you taking, Tua or Haskins? Dwayne Haskins.
Sure. It's a great question, and it's not a slam dunk, I don't believe, but based on what I've seen to date, based on both throwing dynamics, but most notably what Tua pulled off in the national championship game, he would have to be the selection right now. That's who I'm going with right now. And that's not coming from an NFL scout who's going to watch for different aspects of their throwing game and their ability to work the reads and deliver the football. This is from the standpoint of logic that they're very comparable, but Tua has done it on the biggest stage in the clutch, and he has a little bit more experience at this point than Dwayne Haskins.
All right, that's it for me.
All right, 2KJ joining us here at Mark Rogers TV. You have a great night.
You too.
2KJ is a big Bama fan, and he is prominent on the chat. They're talking college football. All right, we are awaiting an appearance from Savannah Lee Richardson from Bulldog Illustrated. I also had hoped that Cam Underwood from State of the U was going to join us. We had a conversation earlier today, and he was going to be joining us tonight sometime after 7 o'clock. So we hope that everything is okay with Cam. Of course, our newsletter, got to join that. Voice of College Football. Just send your email address to MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. Leave it right there. Shop on Amazon using the links below in the description section. And, of course, like, comment, and subscribe. George says it all the time. I don't understand it myself, so I'm just encouraging you. Let's put it that way. I'm encouraging you to please like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoy the show. Even if you disagree with me, if I'm delivering, whether that be just from myself or with all the guests that I have on, the live chat, the whole dynamic of everything we bring to the table, you enjoy the product, and I believe that you wouldn't keep coming back if you don't, then please give us a like and subscribe to the channel. And if the notifications drive you crazy, and I really don't experience that myself, I subscribe to other channels, and I don't even know what my settings are for my notifications. I'm not bothered by them, but I know that people in the past have said, Mark, when you're releasing like 12 videos in a day, it's driving me nuts, so I stopped subscribing. Well, please don't stop subscribing. Please subscribe to the channel, and we deliver the best in college football analysis, discussion, and debate. Let me go to the live chat and see if you guys have anything to say. Otherwise, it's 860-325-3687. And also want to remind you that on Friday, Steve Merrill of Pro Sports Info will join us at 11:45 in the morning Eastern time to talk about the betting lines for Week 5 of college football. And Steve does an outstanding job, and I enjoy the conversation each and every week. And I will do my best to forget what my betting and what my prediction record was in particular in Week 4. 2 great weeks, 2 bad weeks equals a decent start for Mark Rogers TV and my predictions this year in 2018. Let's check out the live chat. And as always, if you guys have any suggestions for content, certainly most of those are going to be addressed in the off season. Most of you have suggestions to do all-time lists and things of that sort that I love to do, but it's more of an off-season content topic. During the season, previews, predictions, analysis. Previews, predictions, analysis. If you join us on Saturday, we have a whole lot of fun, and I hope you do join us for instant analysis. So we go live throughout the day on Saturday, and we talk the games that are on the line right then and there. We go to the fourth quarter drives, the overtime possessions that decide games, and we talk up the action on the field, and we do it in real time. Instant analysis here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. All right. On the live chat, as I await Savannah Lee Richardson from Bulldog Illustrated and Cam Underwood from State of the U, as I look forward to them coming on. Again, tomorrow night, Thursday night, 7 o'clock Eastern time, and I may start the live stream a little bit earlier than that, knowing that the football game kicks off at, I believe, 7:30 or 7:45 between North Carolina and Miami. We'll jump back on the line at halftime to provide halftime analysis, and then post-game of North Carolina-Miami talk, as well as get you set for Week 5. All right, let's see what you guys are digging up here. James Scott, my prediction record was terrible for Week 4. You and me, James. I was just beaten down by a bunch of bad beats to the point where I created and produced and posted my first bad beat video. It was a whole lot of fun to do in a cathartic way. I didn't have fun losing all those games, but I did have fun kind of dissecting the bad beats for the first time. It's a great concept. Of course, we've all seen it. Most likely you have on Scott Van Pelt's show on ESPN. Emmanuel is in the chat room as well as Valdis Mosley. We appreciate you guys. Mark, do you think Kentucky is getting Georgia at the best time for an upset? Terrion McKnight. And if I screwed up your last name, McCreet, my bad. The eyes are failing me. So, Terrion, the one thing I know about that game right now, because it's a few weeks away, is that Kentucky has Georgia at home. That's big. I don't know if they have them at the right time. I'd have to check out the schedule. You're probably alluding to some type of trap game situation that I'm unaware of. Emmanuel, Mark is usually pretty good with predictions. Yeah, we can't knock them out every week. So we were 16-6 the week before, but 9-15 against the spread last week, and only 18-8 straight up. Emmanuel thinks Oregon's going to beat Cal this weekend. Georgia, Kentucky is November 3rd. So we've got a lot of football to play between now and then. Look at the Kentucky schedule and see all the challengers that the Wildcats have to face between now and taking on Georgia. It's pretty severe. All right. It's been a long live stream. I'm going to kick back a little bit. Of course, you can call me at 860-325-3687. Otherwise, I'm awaiting Savannah Lee Richardson from Bulldog Illustrated to talk Georgia, Tennessee, and also Cam Underwood from State of the U. So if you follow Cam on Twitter, let him know Mark Rogers TV is waiting on him. And I've contacted him a few times. We spoke earlier. All right, Emmanuel, I'm not saying Helton is fake, but he is soft, and players, I feel, can't respect him fully knowing their coach is soft and weak. James, I hope I said that the right way. Jaems, Scott. I'm already subscribed. Thank you. I appreciate you subscribing, but I do forget to like from time to time. That's certainly understandable. I watch a lot of videos that I like, that I enjoy, but I didn't click the like button, so I forgive you. I'm just asking that you do this for me because we're trying to build a platform here, and YouTube responds to the likes and the comments and the subscriber list. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Yeah, who do we have on the line?
Terry Ann McCray.
Oh, Terry Ann. How are you?
Fine. I was calling to talk about my question that was in the feed. The reason I ask that is because Georgia plays Florida, then LSU, then Kentucky, then Auburn.
Wow. Okay, let me give this a look. And Terry Ann, so I appreciate you calling for no other reason that I get to hear your voice, hear your question firsthand, and also I got to hear you pronounce your name, so I won't make that mistake the next time. So it's Terry Ann McCrite.
Right.
Excellent. Awesome. I hate butchering people's names, but some names obviously you can say different ways.
I understand when people butcher my name.
It just kind of looked like McCree to me. All right, let's look at this Georgia schedule here. Let's pull this up. So, of course, the Bulldogs this season have one of their easier games this week against Tennessee. Then you've got Vandy. It's LSU on the road. It's Florida. And as you mentioned, then they go to Kentucky. So the previous 2 weeks could be difficult for the Bulldogs. And so, yeah, Kentucky, November 3rd, after a rough stretch of a couple consecutive SEC games. Yeah, that could be a good time for Kentucky to jump up and bite them. Let's see what Kentucky has. I know that they've got a rough stretch, which started with Florida and Mississippi State, although they did take a week off with Murray State in between there. But leading up to Georgia, of course, they got South Carolina this week at home. They've got to go to Texas A&M. They've got Vandy. They've got Mizzou on the road. Then they have Georgia. So, of course, as you know, Kentucky's not necessarily in a position where they can be looking past anyone. They're not that good, quite that yet. So they've got to go to Columbia to take on Missouri. So that, to me, the way it looks right now is a toss-up game. So they're going to be focused, hopefully, for them on Missouri that week. But, yeah, Georgia going to Kentucky. I'm glad that maybe we possibly have a little intrigue in the SEC Eastern Division, because I certainly didn't think that we would have any this year. Who do you root for, Terry Ann?
I'm an Alabama fan.
Okay.
Mainly, but I root for all the SEC teams when they're not playing Alabama.
So you were really pulling for LSU against Miami and Auburn against Washington and all those big games early in the season.
Yes.
And then comes bowl play. You lock in on those SEC teams to hold up the conference pride.
Yeah.
Now, see, I like that.
I was a daddy's girl, and he was like that too. And I always used to ask him, I'd say, Daddy, why do you yell for the other teams? And he said, well, I yell for them because if they don't win their games and Alabama plays them and beats them, they haven't done anything. But if they've won and Alabama plays them and beats them, then they've done something.
It makes you look good. It makes you look better. Sure. And the SEC is really taking care of business this year. So I don't know how you feel about it, but I would think most of us would agree that the SEC was the dominant conference for about 7 or 8 or 9 years, something in that range. And here over the last maybe 3 or 4 years, it's been debatable. It's been not that the SEC was not the best conference, but it was hard to decide. It's been very close between the Big Ten and the ACC as well. But this year, the SEC is really taking care of business.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm very proud of them this year. And like you said, in the last 2 or 3 years, I've kind of been a little down on them because they hadn't took care of business. But this year, they seem to be.
Absolutely. They've won all the big games. All right, Terry Ann, I appreciate you joining the show. Is there anything else you've got for us?
No, sir. I just wanted to call and kind of get my question cleared up for you.
Well, I think you pointed something out. Yeah, you definitely pointed something out in regards to the schedule and leading up to that big game that Kentucky may be able to jump out there and catch Georgia, not necessarily napping, because if Kentucky shows up undefeated or maybe has one loss, they're going to get Georgia's attention. But it's tough to get up week after week after week after week, and Georgia potentially has 2 very difficult games right before Kentucky. So it's a great point by you.
Thank you.
All right, Terry Ann.
Have a great night.
You as well. Good night. That was Terry Ann McCrite on the line, joining us here at Mark Rogers TV to talk a little. She's an Alabama fan, but she pointed out some Georgia scheduling there. So those SEC fans looking out for each other. So talking Georgia football, of course, we talked to Savannah Lee Richardson from Bulldog Illustrated as the Bulldogs prepare for what's typically a big matchup in the SEC Eastern Division. But this year, wow, it could get ugly mighty early. At least Vegas thinks so at 31.5 points. Savannah, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. So we had an Alabama fan there looking at Georgia's schedule, and because of Kentucky surprising some folks here in the last few weeks, knocking off Mississippi State and Florida, thinking, okay, does Georgia possibly have any competition? And of course, they dusted off South Carolina, who was supposed to be the competition. And now people, as you can imagine, that don't have a dog in the fight are kind of hoping maybe Kentucky can give them a fight here. And so they're already looking ahead to the Kentucky-Georgia game.
Well, Kentucky's done a great job so far this season. Benny Snell is a monster carrying the football, and I mean, it's pretty impressive what they've done. However, this weekend I think will be a really good test as to see how they can stack up to a team that Georgia's already faced. If they do the same thing that Georgia did to them, I will definitely be a little bit more excited about the Georgia versus Kentucky game, but I want them to like dominate. I don't know. I just want them to continue to do it, because if this is the real deal, like heck yeah, I want a game on November 3rd to be a top 25 matchup. That just makes Georgia's schedule look better. And so I mean, I'm down for it. I mean, the SEC East needs to. Is Kentucky in the? No, Kentucky's not. Is Kentucky in the East? Am I having just a brain fart right now?
You are. Kentucky's in the East.
Okay, it is. Okay. See, we need more competition outside of Tennessee and Florida in the East, because that's what it's been the last 10 years. It's been Georgia, Tennessee, Florida. And so the fact that, Kentucky's becoming competitive, I like it. I want to see if Benny Snell can really do something against our defense. And if Georgia's defense plays like they did last weekend, it could be a long day for the Dogs.
Savannah Lee Richardson joining us from Bulldog Illustrated to break down the Dogs as they prepare for Tennessee, coming off a win over Missouri in Columbia. Your thoughts about that game? It pretty much turned out the way I thought. I didn't see it live, but I went back and watched the expanded 30-minute cut down, and it seemed as though Mizzou made some plays, but as soon as they would get within a score, Georgia would jump back out after getting out to like a 20-7 lead. It was just one of those games that never got too interesting. Even though it wasn't a blowout, Georgia was clearly the better team, and Mizzou would make some plays, get on the board, and Georgia would come right back and answer the score.
I just want to go on record and say that I underestimated Missouri. I thought they played a very well put together ball game. They played well on every aspect of the game, and they just did a good job. Drew Lock's a heck of a quarterback. I thought his offensive line protected him well up until the second half of the ball game, where Georgia finally started getting a lot of pressure. Well, Georgia's defense got pressure throughout the game, but I thought that he was allowed enough time. Granted, he can make a play in about a second and a half, but I actually just got back from watching film and watching the game over again, and so I thought Georgia was pretty sloppy. Very complacent in the game. I'm very being nitpicky because we expect perfection now at Georgia after, what they've done the first 3 games and then what they did last year outside of the first Auburn game. And so a lot of Georgia fans have had a lot of concerns after this week. There's a lot of holes, injuries, and stuff. But at the same time, I think, like you said, they did what they were supposed to do. They went in there, they won, they covered the spread, and they're moving on to Tennessee this week. I think they just need to put it behind them and chalk it up as, what, Missouri caught us off guard. They came prepared. They came ready to play, and we can't let a team do that to us again. So I practice this week has been pretty intimidating. We only got 2 days. We didn't get any availability today, but practice was very intense both days. Lots of colorful language, lots of motivational talking, and just coaches getting on players, making them become more and more physical, because that's what Kirby Smart said was the biggest issue, was Missouri was out being more physical than Georgia. And so that cannot happen if Georgia wants to make it until the college football playoff. So
okay, whoa. Colorful language. What are we talking about here? What's been said this week?
Oh, well, when I say colorful language, like F-bombs and explicit terms. I can't, cuss words.
All right.
Usual coaching stuff when I say colorful language. I will say that Scott Sinclair, the strength and conditioning director at Georgia, was yelling like 2 or 3 times that this is the purge. You either get in or get out. Like, this is the purge. So I don't know exactly what that means, but evidently they're trying to get guys to play for Georgia football or do or die, I guess. I don't know. I just thought it was interesting how he used this is the purge.
Georgia fans, if you want to see your helmet displayed on the set here, what you need to do is you need to leave your choice of the Georgia helmet and anyone else, because I'm going to add at least 2 helmets to the display on October 1st. So if you want Georgia, you leave it not in the live chat here because I'll miss it. Leave it as a comment to any of the videos that you want to see Georgia and whomever else. And I'm speaking to all fan bases. Whatever 2 helmets you want to see displayed that I don't already have amongst the Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Washington, then leave that in the comments. Do we feel, Savannah, after, let's see, 4 games and really 2 big opponents during that time, Mizzou and South Carolina, that Georgia has a pretty good feel, Kirby Smart, as to what he has at the running back situation? And basically we've seen what the distribution of the carries is going to be and what the flow of the game is in regards to how these backs are going to be used.
I don't think so. I think that DeAndre Swift has had a lingering groin issue since the spring, and the Middle Tennessee State game, they took him out and kept him out almost the entire second quarter through the rest of the game. And so last week he carried the ball 16 times and did a pretty good job. I think they're still letting him get back into the groove of things, continuing to learn, like being able to carry the ball a lot more. But Elijah Holyfield continues to impress. I think James Cook is on the cusp of really just making moves. He's just really small right now because he just came out of high school. He needs a good year under the nutrition system and stuff. But he is so quick. I remember watching that the first handoff or sweep or something that he got at the beginning of the Missouri game, and just thinking, "Holy crap, this kid is so quick." And so I don't think that we've seen only a small amount of what Georgia's running backs can do, because I know Elijah Holyfield wants it more, and I know that Swift wants it more, just to show that he can be that premier back. So I think we'll be able to see Swift a little bit more this week, and we'll probably by the end of Vandy, we'll be able to see a lot more of what Georgia was wanting to do with his offense. I think that Georgia's still trying to figure it out, even with the passing, because there's so many weapons. You're trying to figure out how to get them all in the ball game.
When I was growing up, I always thought that orange and white look was really sharp, and the checkered end zones, the orange and white checkered end zone, I thought that was really cool. And at that point at Neyland Stadium, they were playing on artificial turf, and so sometimes if it got wet, it rained, it would glisten, and all that orange and white, it was just beautiful. It's a pretty good look.
No, not at all. It's gaudy. Like, it's just. That's all they got. They got orange and white. There's no like second color or third color to like offset it. And then they try to do it with a smoky gray, and it just did not work at all.
I didn't like those.
No, I don't know. It's just. Have you ever been to Tennessee to see a game?
No, I've not been to the stadium.
Okay, well, you have to go if you go and you see the amount of orange. And I think I'm not even trying to be like biased because I'm a Georgia fan. It's just a lot. Like, and it's so fluorescent, and it almost starts hurting your eyes at times, especially if it gets really sunny.
Now, Savannah, I assume that it all depends on how good the teams are in the Eastern Division. So obviously when Florida was really good, you hated them the most, and it changes based on how good the teams are. But generally, where do these teams stand, these rivals? Tennessee, Florida, those are the 2 big ones. Auburn. So between those, I'm not missing anyone right here. Those are the 3, right?
Oh, I mean, if you want to include Tech, but it's really not a rivalry anymore.
Yeah, Georgia Tech. Okay, sorry. Yeah, that's an annual game.
In my opinion, I think it goes Auburn, Florida, Tennessee, Tech. And about 5 years ago, I would probably put Tennessee and Florida right there, probably Florida and Tennessee, just because every year you didn't know if Georgia was going to show up and be a dominant team, or if they were going to, be complacent and get up a few points, or just not be in the ball game at all. And so, like, the past 3 years with Kirby Smart, I definitely would put Auburn at that top rivalry ranking just because they can make or break you at the end of November. And then going in Florida next, just because Florida, you never know what Florida can do, especially on a neutral turf. They always come ready to play. And then I would put Tennessee towards the bottom just because they've been rebuilding since Kirby Smart has gotten here, besides the Hail Mary game. And of course, that one went down to the wire. But since then, it's not been much of a competition. And I don't think it will continue to be much of a competition until Jeremy Pruitt can get those guys to buy into his program. And I don't know how well that's working out, but I hope it does work out because I'd love to see Georgia and Tennessee be really competitive again.
Georgia fans, you can write in and let us know how you would rank Georgia's rivals, which we believe are pretty obvious: Auburn, Florida, Tennessee, and Georgia Tech. So how would you rank their rivalries? Savannah's saying Auburn's the toughest, most fierce rival of the Georgia Bulldogs, and then Florida, then Tennessee, then poor Georgia Tech.
Yeah, I would say that for sure. But I mean, it differs each year. I mean, you got to think of who's got who and who's doing well and or whatnot. But I don't know. I just always, with the first ever blackout game, trying to get into Auburn's head and getting into Auburn's head and beating them. I just always remember some of my favorite memories from being a Georgia fan are coming from the South Soldiers rivalry. It's kind of hard not to give it to the South Soldiers rivalry with almost 120 games now between the two teams. So maybe not that much, maybe 115.
Dennis Wilson enjoys on the live chat here just hearing from Savannah Lee Richardson. So he comments that he's a fan, but he would like to recruit you to Miami. Dennis is a Miami fan.
Oh. Well, if they offer me a job, I'll, I mean, after December, I'll be looking for, because I'll be finishing up with school, finishing up with everything with Bulldog Illustrated. So I'll stick around with Bulldog Illustrated as long as I can, but I am, I can't stay there forever because it's essentially more of an internship than it is a job, but I do a lot of stuff for Bulldog Illustrated.
Dennis asks, Savannah, are you glad Mark Richt is gone?
Yeah, I actually am. I'm very glad that Mark Richt's gone. I think what Kirby Smart has brought to the program is a lot of discipline, physicality, and what Georgia needs to go to that next level. As you saw last year, making it to the SEC championship game for one, winning the SEC championship for two at the second part, and then going into the college football playoff, beating a very good Oklahoma team, and then taking Alabama to the wire, what a lot of teams besides Clemson and Auburn, of course, in the regular season last year could do. So, yeah, Kirby Smart is doing a lot more than what Mark Richt did. Mark Richt put the program back on the map. However, I think he hit that plateau when it came to recruiting and executing and getting players to buy into his program. And so I think this is a breath of fresh air for Georgia's team. And I think Georgia's only going to be going up from here. And I'm not trying to be biased or anything. It's just you see the physicality and the discipline and the grit and the determination that this team has. And I don't remember seeing that 5 years ago. So that's what's really exciting.
Got Emmanuel Moreno, who's ranking the SEC uniforms. Ole Miss number 5, Georgia 4, Florida 3, LSU 2, and Alabama number 1.
I mean, that's cool.
Ranking uniforms. I've never done this, so I rank everything else, but it's actually got to be play on the field. I'm not big into ranking uniforms, but I did start it. I admit it with my comments about Tennessee. So we've seen Georgia play 4 games, of course. As I mentioned, 2 were SEC games, somewhat competitive. They've got this game coming up against Tennessee, which most likely won't be much of a game, but still they're coming through now, the SEC gauntlet of the teams that matter. Who are the players that we need to look out for? So who are the guys that we talked about in the offseason but didn't necessarily have a lot of playing time for this Georgia team, but you knew that would need to step up? And how would you assess some of the players that have made an impact that didn't have that opportunity before this year?
Probably Akil Crumpton is one of them, because he came in last year, transferred into the system, and didn't get a whole lot of opportunities until later in the year, which he had some bursts, especially the Georgia Tech run is probably one of my favorite calls that our radio guy does. I mean, Scott Howard he does a straight out of Crumpton run. That's probably one of the more classics outside of the Larry Munson era of the radio calls. But him for sure, he's done a great job with punt returns and kick returns and even catching the ball. The kid's got stick them in his hands. Doesn't matter what you throw at him. He's had a couple drops, but it's been either too high or too low. He's fast. I'd even put him up against Miko Hardman on speed wise for sure. Some other guys that have Tyler Simmons, definitely Tyler Simmons. His blocking is getting so much better. That's what's actually got him into the wide receiver rotation. He's hurt now, but he could potentially be back in the next few weeks. He got his shoulder hurt last week. Sorry. I'm trying to think of some other guys that I talked about that I didn't really. On the defense, I think Jawan Taylor has really stepped up this year. He's done a very good job. His speeds and his physicality is a lot better. I think Natrez is becoming more and more comfortable into his leadership role. But some guys to watch out for against Tennessee. I think actually, despite all not seeing Demetrius Robertson come in much besides his 72, 73-yard run in the first game, I think we actually start seeing him this week. He looked really good in practice. His blocking seems to be improving. And so I'm really looking out for him. And I'm hoping to see, some more of the tight ends. I'd love to see Luke Ford come out and challenge Isaac Nauta for some touches, because Nauta's essentially the only tight end right now getting any love from Jake Fromm. And in my opinion, as much weapons as we have on our wide receivers, I think we should utilize our tight ends to that extent as well. But they're usually blocking right now. But when they do get a ball open, it's usually a pretty good pass, or it's getting a first down. It's moving the chains. It's keeping that drive going. We didn't do a great job of that last weekend, but yeah, I guess that's answering your question. I'm trying to think of other names. There's so many guys that could be said. Terry Godwin's been quiet since the first game because he's been fighting the injury bug as well. I think James Cooks could also be somebody that could just electrify and really shock some people. I said it before, it's only a matter of time before he breaks one and just gets to the house. If he gets an edge and he can stay on his feet, I don't think anybody could catch him.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game that we love. We got Savannah Lee Richardson on the line from Bulldog Illustrated, talking Dogs and Tennessee Volunteers coming up this Saturday. Savannah, we appreciate you jumping on the line.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
All right, everyone. I believe that wraps it up for a Wednesday night. As we prepare for Thursday night, we've got a game with Miami taking on North Carolina. We will join everyone pregame, so that will be 7 o'clock Eastern time at the latest, since the game kicks off around 7:30 to 7:45. I may jump on a little bit earlier if I can. We will join you for the pregame, halftime, and postgame analysis of North Carolina, Miami, and get you set for college football week 5 on Saturday, with a couple games on Friday night as well. Right here at the voice of college football, Mark Rogers TV. Please like, comment, and subscribe as we bring you the best discussion, debate, and analysis that you will find online. And of course, subscribe to our newsletter as well. You can join some of the folks on the chat, and they will let you know, as they have given us rave reviews on our newsletter, The Voice of College Football, that's released each and every Monday. So just send your email address to markrogerstv@gmail.com, and we'll get you all set up for our week 5 wrap-up. We will see you on Thursday night, 7 o'clock Eastern time, right here